Hey everybody, welcome back to the Danger Planet in our final installment of Ashes of Malifaux content. This time we're talking about Resurrectionists. Today, and today only, and maybe hopefully sometime in the future, I am joined by the wonderful Resurrectionist players, the best Resurrectionist players on the face of the planet, Joe P. and Doug B. Say hello to the internet, guys.
Good evening, everybody. How's it going?
We meet again, the internet. I hope you're well.
Oh boy, am I excited for these models. Joe has sort of been my personal guru on Resurrectionists. I've texted him a bunch over the past couple months.
I believe we refer to him as the Resurrectionist Sensei.
Sensei Rez.
No, you guys are way too
Sensei
nice.
Rez. Sensei Rez.
It does help
that's his
Joe,
album name.
Yeah, it does help that Joe is sort of the first serious Reser player I ever met in my Malifaux journey, but also he comes to Boston once a year to hang out with us. So, I mean, not just to hang out with us.
To watch a game of Joe playing as Seamus 1 is to watch him spin a wonderful, magical, artistic tale of Malifaux activation sequences.
Yeah, amazing.
You guys are making me blush. Thank God we're not on camera here.
Oh man. But we knew we were going to do this Ashes of Malifaux video, and there was no one I'd rather have. So thank you so much, Joe, for coming.
Hey, no worries, guys.
What do you got? What are you going on? Are you going to any tournaments soon? Are you doing any fun Malifaux related stuff?
I kind of went into hibernation a little bit after our event in November that you came out for, which we had a great time planning.
Yes.
And then
It was so good.
Next thing we've got on the docket locally here is Adepticon in March.
Yep, which I will see you there for in the Chicago, folks. Joe, Landon, Haku, and I are all planning a trip to the famous Rat Hole. So stay tuned. I don't know that that's actually true, but I want to go to it. Do you know where it is?
No.
Oh, it's north. It's aggressively north. I don't know how far north, but yeah, it's somewhere. It's north of Haku, and he says it's really far, and I'm like, I want to do it.
Well, I'll stay tuned for more info on that, I guess.
Yeah, save the date.
Joe's like, cool. I have no idea what you're talking about.
You've seen me here through the camera. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, do you not? Oh, so basically, over at some point,
I literally have no idea what he's talking about either, Joe. Honestly.
It's sort of a famous landmark in northern Chicago now. If you Google it, you can see.
Oh,
it's basically
this is where the rat fell on the concrete.
The rat fell in the concrete, yeah, and then they
Oh, it's a literal. I thought it was an establishment, like a bar.
I know.
I thought it was like a restaurant called the Rat Hole.
No,
we're
it's
talking about a hole in the cement that a worker ran over with and created the silhouette of a rat. Yeah, you want to go to the literal hole that looks like a rat.
Yeah, I want to go there and I want to take a selfie and I want to eat a corn dog.
You're so weird, man. You're so weird. You're wonderful, but you're so weird.
We're doing it. We're going to the Rat Hole, Joe. You and Landon and Haku and I and Joel and other Chicago people, all of Chicago, Malifaux. If you're in Chicago and Malifaux,
so not too far from him. He lives downtown now.
Yeah.
Well, actually, hold on. Are you ready for the best fucking transition ever?
I am not.
I bet after that rat got run over by that steam-powered vehicle, there was a whole bunch of leftovers. Oh.
Man. I would wax poetic about that rat's feudal struggle, but I feel like I would have to. I'd be more inclined to be worried about its rancid smell, Yeah. But who am I? I don't get another mouth to feed, so I guess
you guys are professionals. I'm in awe here.
Thank you. Oh man,
right.
I don't get down in the comments if you've watched the whole series of all 8 videos that I shot in one day. Go ahead and tell us which is the worst pun. From all of the videos, and I don't know.
Yeah, what's the worst pun? Not the best pun. We need to know the worst ones.
The worst,
so we can eliminate those from our punnitoire.
Yeah, we're gonna talk. We're just gonna jump right into it. So we have the first group of keywords for this collection of models, which are experimental and transmortis for Von Stuck and McMorning. We have the model The Leftovers. It's an undead construct. It costs 8 soul stones for an enforcer with 8 health. It's defense 4. Which normally I've been saying is awful, which is true, but it's much less of a liability in this case because, well, reasons we'll talk about, but he's willpower 5, he has 5 movement, and he's size 3. He's on a 50 mil, so he's a big lad. He has Bloated Stench, which makes models that damage them with melee attacks get poisoned after resolving, which is pretty strong. He has Feudal Struggle, which is the thing that's going to crack this model wide open, quite frankly. But it means that enemy models in base contact with this model may not move from effects other than the disengage action.
So good.
Which means
So good.
you can't rip them out with I've got your back, you can't teleport them, you can't place them, you can't, nothing. All of that is move, none of it works, you can't push them, anything. They're stuck in base contact until their activation, if your opponent does not have a way to move it out of keyword, or to obey it, rather, out of activation, or to take the disengage action, or to kill the leftovers, which is exactly what you want. Finishing up, he has Hard to Wound Perverse Metabolism because there's McMorning, so he heals from poison. But finally, he has Demise Bisected. So after this model is killed by an enemy model, it heals 4 and is replaced with 2 bisected models. We'll get to that in a second, but some important tips about replacing. If you had upgrades on him before, friendly or enemy, like if Jackdaw put them on or if you hired one, they go away when you replace. The only type of upgrade that shows up when you have that stays on a replaced model is a summon upgrade, which this guy is incapable of. Well, actually, to be fair, you can hire him in Transmortis, which, or actually, no, you can't. Minion? Transmortis is minion, right? Shit. Hold on. 1 second.
What are you? Yeah, which
The new student upgrade is summon.
That's the summon upgrade is minion.
Academic Zeal, right? It's recruitment effort. Transmortis
Well, no,
minion.
you can
Okay,
put
yeah,
it
you
on-
can't. No.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can't get
it's summons minion. Yeah, so there's no way to summon this guy. You just gotta pay for him. Also importantly, the 2 bisected replace with 4 health each, because it doesn't matter how many models you replace with, they both come in with the health that this guy has, which is exactly half, which is how much he heals. And lastly, any conditions transfers to exactly one of the models that he replaced with.
You could summon it. You could summon the minion one, by the way.
Are they? Oh, they're all. No. This model. Oh, cannot be hired.
Yeah, it can't be hired. It can be summoned.
Holy shit. So you can just Academic Seal a bisected?
Yes.
That's so funny. Wild stuff, dude. Okay, we'll talk about his backside and then we'll talk about the ramifications of that. So we have another Mouth to Feed, which is a stat 6 melee that does 2-4-6, which is quite good against defense, 1-inch range. It has an amazing trigger and accidental rollover where you push 5 in any direction ignoring models, and models move through, suffer 1 damage and poison. There's no test to resist it. It just happens. And then he also has Daze to stun and push in 3 inches any boyos. So if you can't quite get there and you daze them, you can bring them into base contact with you. He also has Lecture Notes, the Von Stuck crew bonus action, which is a 5 attack against willpower to stun the target, but it has a mask for on your heals. He has Rancid Smell, which is a 4-inch aura he can put off for a suitless 6 that causes enemy models have to attack him, or if they're within aura, or they get a negative flip to any of their actions, their attack actions. Actually, their actions targeting, but that's what attack action means. There's a trigger for once per activation, enemy models within range have to pass a TN12 willpower duel or gain staggered, which is just generally very good if you can hit it. But the signature bit of this model is using mass. You don't flip for it, it just happens. It's once per activation, and this is a thing on every single one of the models in this degradation chain. Push this model 6 inches in any direction ignoring models. Models move through this way have to take a TN12 move duel or take 2 poison. Models that share a keyword with this model may ignore the effects of this. Generally, you'll probably only do that with experimental. With Transmortis, you won't do that with experimental because you want them to have poison. But the bread and butter of this guy is that when he dies, he turns into 2 bisected, which get a little bit worse in all their stats. They get a little bit worse in some of their abilities. And when they die, they each turn into 2 last bites. Keeping in mind the chain of activations and whether things have activated or not, the turn that they kill this leftovers, if they kill a bisected as well, you're causing them to sink in an insane amount of damage, an insane amount of AP to actually remove this model completely from the battlefield, and an insane amount of AP that you're just generating off of it if you can sort of roll with the punches. So that being said, Joe, what do you think about the leftovers and its degradation chain?
You think Brandon likes this model?
It's possible. It's possible I
It's
might.
hard to figure
It's possible Brandon might like this model. It's possible.
All right. So first of all, let's say you're paying eight soul stones for 24 wounds of models, right? I think it has to be said. Like that's a pretty
For
good
sure.
deal.
Yes,
Right?
it is an insanely good deal.
Divided across multiple
Divided
bodies.
across multiple things.
So you can't just sink damage into it and solve the problem. The
Right.
problem is much more complex and like a fine, flaky croissant. Multiple layers exist.
This is going to go on one of those achievement unlock, like trophy hunt that you're trying to do in a Malifaux game, like where you actually kill.
It's going to go on our
piece of this
narrative league
in one
achievement. Round 2 is what it's going on, Joe, and we're going to call it Joe's Special just for you, my man.
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right. So all right. First blush, it seems like a great model, right? It's a huge resource sink for your opponent. It's one of the very few stat 6 or top end 6 damage in the faction. I think Archie and there's one more, I think, or maybe not. Can't think off the top of my head if
They're not super common in green, unfortunately.
I think it's a very good model. I think Rancid Smell, giving something staggered, especially if they're on, if they don't pass the aftertaste trigger, now you can't even really disengage from this model in a lot of ways, because you still have a stat 6 attack. You're going to probably be, if they try and disengage, you're probably going to stop them if they're staggered. I think I struggled. It's very obvious why it fits in experimental, right? I think especially with McMorning 2, the knock is, well, you spend your whole first turn dirtling and not really moving up the board. Well, this guy really helps your unpack and lets you be more efficient with a lot of other models, because with 1 AP, you could basically put poison 2 on your whole crew. Now, obviously, you have to bunch up at the start to do that. There may be reasons why you don't want to do that, but I think that's great. That's great right off the bat. Rancid Smell is, I want to make sure I heard the right thing. This actually is great at defending your other crew, right? Because it gives negatives when the model in base contact tries to target something else. So if they just want to ignore leftovers and just shoot at somebody else or bomb some other model, they're going to get negatives, which is great. I struggled originally to see why it would fit in Shtuk until I started to think about, all right, it's a construct, it's an undead. Now you're going to get it near a scheme marker. It's going to be living, and you're basically going to have shielded, pushing this thing up the board. You're going to be taking general actions. So it's actually going to be very efficient, I think.
Not to mention flipping it all over the place with Von Stuck too, right? It's a 50 mil.
Right. And the oozing mass is nice offensively. I mean, just to generate some hand pressure on your opponent with some movement duels. I mean, poison 2 isn't that big of a deal, but it could add up. It's a good model. I mean, it seems like a good model. It's got 8 wounds. There's just a ton of Landon and I were kibitzing about like how many AP it's actually going to take to kill this thing.
Yeah,
it's way too many AP.
It's far too many.
It's just way too many.
If you find yourself going down that road, you've already lost, realistically speaking.
The thing is, like, you want this thing, obviously you want it in your opponent's face, right? Otherwise, Feudal Struggle doesn't help. You want it in the middle of the board. You want it. And the other thing, I don't know if you mentioned, all of these splits are significant, right?
Every single one of them.
Every single one is significant.
Not only are they significant, but the multiple models you're getting on the board are all replace effects. None of them are summoned.
Not summoned.
They can all interact with the strat in every meaningful way possible. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, I mean, think about a Raid the Vaults on the center line where there's a scrum, and all of a sudden you're stuck and you're used to playing with 7 models total. And maybe you've lost some of these Guard the Stash, Raid the Vaults in the past because you just didn't have enough models at the end of the game, right? Well, now all of a sudden you've got 6 models, instead of 1. Now, maybe a savvy opponent just kind of tries to ignore it and doesn't really kill it because the demise only happens when an opponent kills him.
Correct.
And obviously you can tech against it if someone declares Transmortis or experimental. You may choose to bring in some anti-demise if you have that available now.
Yeah. Or anti-heal will stop it as well, because the models will not heal, they'll replace and then die again, right? But the fact that that is so few and far between, and you have to make the gamble on whether they're doing that in a keyword where you really need to be doing other things if you're playing against a Transmortis, because you want the armor piercing. In the experimental, you need condition removal to stop McMorning's poison bullshit. So, like, are you really going to be able to afford that and on top? Plus, if you just kill your opponent's one model with Lantern of Souls or like an anti-heal aura, then that's it. They have to deal with it, or
Yeah, I'm trying to look up McMorning's upgrades on my phone right now. I just want to see what I would love to put on that.
What I would love to put on it, I can tell you, because I've thought about this extensively.
In fact, there's nothing else I've thought about for the last 3 days.
Nothing else. So McMorning's big deal is the extra legs upgrade, which is the corpse marker one, which gives him charge through and +2 movement. And let's say you were attacking specifically to bring leftovers. Sorry that this isn't 19 minutes worth of leftovers so far, but leftovers himself, if you give him +2 movement and let's say brought Sloth to fast him, not to mention in McMorning 2, you can staple Sloth's fast action on somebody else and then you can fast like 4 things in a single turn. You have access to a model that can has three 7-inch movements, right? Just from too many legs, and 21 inches across the board, plus McMorning's Desperate Plot 4, so 25 inches. 25 inches to hit literally anything in the board on Wedge. They can't hide from it. They're going to get engaged by it. And if they don't have a way to stop the heal or to stop the Demise Aura, then they have to deal with it. And that is an awful, awful plan for them.
I mean, obviously, Magic Christmas Land, you're thinking about slamming that into somebody's unpack, but with that, it's at least a third activation. Anybody smart is going to have already separated, probably. But
very possibly.
You get one or two key models. I mean, you're not talking about trying to slam it into 3 models. It has to be base-to-base contact. You're probably only ever going to get 2.
Yeah.
The one thing I want to point out, and I'm always thinking about this with in a little bit with a Seamus lens, because or a Riva lens, because I play those keywords the most. Feudal Struggle, if you're used to moving your opponent's models around, is a little bit something you have to work around, right? Because you will not be able to move them. So that means the Valley going in with Shove Aside doesn't work anymore on that model. That's
Take by the hand doesn't work.
By the hand,
Shove Aside still works fine. Shove Aside, you don't attack that model again anyway, so you push them none, then you push yourself forward and hit someone else.
No, it says enemy models in base contact may not move from effects other than
but
Joe's
you don't need... Joe's point is that you can't get the model off with Shove Aside. That's right. Joe's point.
So if you got leftovers in on the front and then you were bringing Valley in and you wanted to try and yeeter further into the crew with Shove Aside, it doesn't work. I'm just thinking like at Shtuk, these are strategies I'm used to using. Like any,
you still get to move the Valedictorian 4 inches.
Yeah, you can still move the Valedictorian. It just you go to move the thing with Shove Aside. The move doesn't happen, but it was still a legal target, and then the Valedictorian gets to resolve her portion of the section.
She pushes forward and punches somebody.
Right. Which again, I'm not saying it doesn't. Yeah, but now you can't. You have to.
Now you can't use it to manipulate the enemy model that you're used to doing.
That's what I was getting at. So there's some things that it's not. It's not 100% good. It's like 98% good. I'm just pointing it out.
Yeah. No, I get it. You're right. You are correct. So where are we putting this thing, gentlemen, now that we've talked about it for almost 25 minutes?
Yeah. So, I mean, my gut instinct here is that I want to hire this out of keyword in every single Resur list, because I think this guy might just be that gross. But, I mean, I temper myself and say auto hire, because quite frankly, I don't think you're ever going to play McMorning or Von Stuck again without hiring this model.
It seems very strong. I mean, Joe, do you agree? Like kind of top end of A?
I definitely think A for sure. Top end is fine. Certainly compared to all these other models, I think that. And
are we okay as a group to say that this ranking is going to encapsulate the conversation of leftovers, bisections, and last bites, because they all are
so you kind
of the same. We're talking about the same thing here, right?
Yeah, well, Joe pointed out you can actually summon the bisector last bites off of the von Stuck academic zeal nonsense. I don't think that you're probably going to do that. So you're literally not allowed to hire Bisection as your last bite. They have a rule on the front of their card.
Yep.
Parts of
Okay,
the whole of this
so
model.
this rating encompasses this whole...
The last bite's kind of interesting because now it gives you an in-keyword minion that's cost 2. So, you had to have, you would, if you killed something that was cost 4, or I think it had to be more than that. I forget the verbiage, but like there were times where you would kill a weak model and not be able to summon anything, right?
Yeah.
Because you didn't have something that was lower cost than it.
Yep, and now you can. Yeah, you're not wrong.
Would you waste your upgrade for that? Maybe not, but we've all had those.
If you're not getting anything else, you might as well.
You might as well
and
get
projectile vomit is useful, and
Yeah,
so
dude.
is oozing mass, and so is evil. Like this model's useful.
It's oozing mass on a significant model that can move 6 somewhere and drop a scheme marker or deny. Maybe it's late turn and you get it on the board and you just shimmy it next to somebody else standing by scheme markers and say, "Oh, sorry, you're ignored now."
Yeah, and I will say, whilst so basically the Bisection is just the oozing mass, but less good in almost every way, except it randomly gains Touch of Madness on its melee attack, which is sort of nuts. Stat 5 melee attack, it's 2, 3, 4, built-in infect and has Touch of Madness. The big deal is that the final evolution of this, the last bite, has See No Evil, which is a flipless aura that just happens. So it's 2 AP or oozing mass to move 6 inches, baby poison and get people, and then See No Evil. Until the end phase, enemy models within range cannot take the interact action and are ignored for schemes and strategies. Which means if you know what's happening and they go in to kill your Bisections or your, eventually your leftovers and then eventually Bisections, you have these you have up to 4 last bites that are just flipping around the board, turning off people's ability to scheme, which will then cost them further AP to deal with. Because if they don't,
and that's the thing. The idea that this, maybe there's going to be a corner. I guess I'm cynical. I don't think this last bite will ever survive until the end of a turn.
No, if they get to a last bite, they have to kill it. They have to kill it right away.
Defense 4, willpower 4, 2 wounds. Like basically any model in the game can kill this model in 1 AP.
It survives in scenarios where your opponent literally doesn't have the AP to point at it.
Yeah, and considering the amount of AP they had to spend to get here, that very well might be the case. Yeah. So this model's wild. It looks, every single stage of it looks so unbelievably disgusting. I can't wait to physically see the models. And I'm going to buy multiple kits of this to just paint in different ways. I don't even care. I think this might be my favorite model in all of Malifaux. Holy shit. This model has literally fucking everything. But in the interest of me not ranting about this model and these 3 models for the next 25 minutes, which I definitely could do, there is a supplemental video coming called Brandon
marries Malifaux model leftovers #part 2 3 4 5 6 7.
Yeah, so. And can I just say, technically this video also counts as an episode of the Danger Kitchen because leftovers are a food item and so is this. Because this guy is a snack. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Drops mic, walks away.
Mic drop. Except I'm wearing a headset, so that doesn't work. All right, thank you all for putting up with my leftovers talk. Let's move on to the Strange Lady, which is something that, as Seamus players, all 3 of us, there's also just like sort of the Seamus podcast now, but it's fine.
Oh my god.
Oh boy.
I've got strong feelings about this lady.
Doug feels the same way about the Strange Lady that I feel about the Bisections. But I think Joe and I also feel that way about the Strange Lady. So this lady is a 10 cost henchman, which is wild because those are few and far between in this book. She is stat 6 on defense and willpower, 5 move, size 2. She has 10 health. She has Cloying Darkness, so enemy models with poison that start their activation with an aura 6 gain distracted. Oh, and also, not only is this a Seamus master, but it's a henchman, but it's a Molly henchman, which is something I have been really
the keyword. The keyword split for this theme is Forgotten/Red Chapel.
Red Chapel. This lady has, because she's from Molly's crew, has a fading ability called Mind Read. When she discards any cards, it may reveal 1 random card in the opponent's control hand. Wild. She has Hard to Kill, because she's a hard to kill henchman, which is wild. Even more wild, Kiss of Death. If this model has 3 or fewer cards in its control hand, it receives a plus mask to its final duel totals. Don't even get me started on that. Let's finish this. Terrifying Gaze, I'm a Terrifying Gaze, so it makes sense. After a model within Aura 6 declares an action outside of its own activation, this model may pitch a card to have that action immediately fail. That ability is so unbelievably strong. But if we look at its back side, the Gorgon's Kiss is a 1-inch stat 6 willpower attack.
Melee.
Melee willpower attack, which is also something that doesn't happen very much. It does 2, 3, 4 damage and poison. The poison's not conditional upon the damage, but like 2, 3, 4 is like kind of a shitty stat. But for a ram, it has finisher, which causes it to be a 3, 4, 5. Because the target suffers +1 damage, +1 damage for each condition on it. But it's when resolving, so it will happen before the poison. So you got to get a condition on it elsewise. But it could maybe be a 4, 5, 6. And the mask trigger, which, if you'll remember, it can build in with Kiss of Death, is Onslaught. Fucking nuts. It also has an Obey, which is, it goes off on an 8, which, if you've built in the trigger, is a suitless 8. But otherwise, it's an 8 of masks. Lets the target take a non-master target take a non-bonus action that doesn't attach upgrades or list a model by name, chosen and controlled by this model. And there's a crow trigger for +1 damage and poison. And then lastly, she has a healing ability that's a tactical action that goes off on a 6 of masks. But again, you build that in. The target heals an amount equal to the difference in the number of cards in this model's control hand and its maximum hand. So to a maximum of 3. And there's a tome trigger for Draw Out Secrets. Joe, this lady is strange. What do you think?
Well, hold on. I think it's important. So this model, more than almost any other model in the Reser book that we're going to look at, with the exception of maybe one other model, it functions so differently in Red Chapel versus Mali, because there's a couple of very specific things that make this banana hammock bonkers in Red Chapel, in my opinion.
Sure.
And and it starts with S and ends with Temptation. Right? So yeah. I guess, Joe, my first question to you is, what are your thoughts on strength in Red Chapel relative strength in Forgotten, in your opinion?
Well, yeah, sure. just talk about them both. You
know, just generally, as far as Red Chapel is concerned, and I'm not as familiar with Forgotten off the top of my head, but she immediately has the best stats in the keyword, right? Defense 6, willpower 6. You mean I can actually cause my opponent to miss an attack? Like, this is newfound territory for someone who's used to playing Resers. Defense 4, defense 5. So right off the top, 10 is a lot. 10 is a lot, but I think she's very good. I think she's good in Red Chapel because of Scarlet Temptation, period.
Yeah, that's the big big thing.
Madame Sybil, the Bell, and the Doxy all have Scarlet Temptation, which is a 1-inch aura.
And Bet,
thank you.
I mean, also for what it's worth, the Mourners have it too, but like...
I forgot about that model, we all do.
Yeah, we all do.
But so anyway, it basically gives your opponent negative flip on willpower duels within an inch if someone else is causing the willpower. So, you have someone engaging Madame Sybil, you charge them with the Strange Lady, and now they're getting negatives to resist your stat 6 willpower attack that does 2, 3, 4, poison 1.
With built-in onslaught.
Potentially built-in onslaught. And I think the order of operations is right. If you cheat in the duel to drop to 3 or fewer cards, you then get to add the mask at the same time, right?
Yes, you do.
So
absolutely.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. So
yes, you do.
That I used this model to great effect today. Its offensive potential is very strong. Hard to kill is nice. I would say it's nice having a model that has at least one stop before it gets killed. I mean, the hard to wound stuff is obviously good, but when you're only defense 4, you're really susceptible to min 3. The heal is very great, especially late in the turn. That's almost always going to be a 3 heal that you can do on yourself. It's also nice to have a 6-inch potentially range scheme marker drop on your model or your opponent's model, depending on the situation.
And you can just shoot obeys at people. Like if they engage your Doxy or they engage your Rotten Bell and they're on the map somewhere and they're fighting them, you're like, oh, cool. Now you're on a negative to my obey that I'm shooting at you.
Yep. Yeah,
which is also fucking crazy.
I mean, I think she's a great model. She is 10 points, right? So it's not like you're paying a premium for it. But I think on the whole, it's a great model. In Forgotten, Let me check my notes here. I do everything on Red Chapel.
It feels like I have some opinions on this in Forgotten, and Brandon, I know you play a ton of Forgotten,
Yeah,
so
I've
I'd
been
be
playing
curious
Molly
about.
nonstop for the past
Yeah,
4 months.
I've been playing a decent amount of Molly recently. I feel like in Forgotten, she's pretty good, but her offensive output, because you don't have Scarlet Temptation, goes way down, and she's kind of playing more of a role of like a utility pocket knife model, but that feels not as good to me because she's like a 10 stone model.
Yeah.
So I feel like I would rather be taking her higher in like Red Chapel Cruise because the offensive output here is just so strong.
One thing,
Red Chapel specifically.
So I think in Red Chapel, I mean, the problem with obeys, right? Everyone, you have to win the duel if you're going to try and do an offensive obey. So Scarlet Temptation makes that I would say very likely, right?
Yeah.
Versus
into a non-Soulstone user, it makes it very
into
likely.
a non-Soulstone user, right? But it makes it much more likely to get off. I think in Molly, you're probably using the obey, not defensively, but on your own models more often.
For sure, yeah.
And so I still think you get some great utility there to make your I forget the Chimera guy's name now, the Rogue Necromancy attack or something else like that. And also it has a lot of poison synergy with Forgotten that it doesn't necessarily have with Red Chapel unless you really
specifically with the totem.
Right.
The totem's poison synergy is brutal.
And the vomit from the Rogue Necromancy gives out poisons. The bloated stench, I think it has as well. So there are some things that tie there. I think you're not really getting Cloying Darkness off much with Red Chapel unless you're really leaning into that with Keepside Strangers, or maybe you're hiring a Corpse Curator out of Keyword or something like that. In my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to get a lot more out of that Aura 6 gaining Distracted 1 for Cloying Darkness, but I don't know if I really will. It is a little bit of win more way too, right? Because if someone's in your Seamus bubble, they're probably going to die. And so that would be the only argument I could say to why do you need this model too, right? If someone's into Sybil and a Doxy and Seamus in a bubble, it's like, I don't need another 10 stone model coming to kill it, right? Now, maybe what that means is I no longer need to, maybe I don't have one bubble anymore. And now I have two bubbles, right? And then maybe that's I'm going to have to play around with it a little bit, but I definitely like it.
I think I just have a couple of things, I guess, to say about this model in Molly. Originally, I think I was a little down on her in Molly, because she is 10 stones, and Molly's crew is, especially with Molly 1, is really tight. You have to have a number of models for the Crueligans to blip around, because in a lot of ways they do a lot of damage and a lot of bullshit, right? And you really need that. But she definitely takes more of a support role in Molly. A couple of the things that she does do, which I think definitely warrants further exploration, is having the Strange Lady, the Rogue Necromancy, and the Totem sort of combine, and possibly with an outer keyword higher from McMorning, or like perhaps maybe a Leftovers. Turning on the insane poison synergy that exists between her totem and everything, right? So she gives out Distracted. The totem has an ability where if you park the totem at the end phase next to somebody, they can't use soulstones or declare triggers, and you can just kill soulstone users with that, which I have done before. It's not that crazy to see. I think the other couple things that she does is like bonus actioning the Philip and the Nanny with one more question if you want to go that route, which people are really down on Philip and the Nanny, but at the end of the day, this is a very scheme heavy GG, and this Gaining Grounds, Debt of Gratitude is an insane trigger, right? Completely insane. And if you can make more Debts of Gratitude happen, that's nuts. But if you're gonna bonus action people, hopping a Crueligan in before, like right at the end next to a Soulstone user, and just obeying to steal an extra Soulstone from them, or obey to Sharp Debris them for a bunch of unresistible damage. There's all kinds of shit that you can do with self-side obeys that are almost guaranteed to go off if you relent, because all you need is an 8, right?
And is your point basically that if you submarine this basically till right after your blippy nonsense with your Kruligans.
Yeah.
That self-side obeys, which traditionally can be lower value unless you have a really good business plan put together for how you're going to use them, can be mega impactful because of the nature of how the Kruligans operate. Is that kind of your point?
Yeah, exactly. Because with Molly, you can have a Kruligan reactivate, guarantee the last activation, and then have a Strange Lady somewhere like halfway up the board, blip a Kruligan over, attack twice with it to steal 2 soul stones, obey it again to steal another soul stone, and then get,
or just like stuff ballots, like literally
or
from
stuff
nothing.
Stuff ballot, obey this guy, stuff ballot, and you can stuff 4 ballots out of nowhere on the last activation, and so the Kruligan can blip to the Strange Lady. So if she's up by a ballot, you can be like, oh, you have 3 votes on that. Actually, you lost control of that, and I'm the only one with votes on it now, and there's nothing your opponent can do.
Yeah, that's the spicy meatball.
If you went second, you just get that as the last activation. My last activation is Kruligan, and the actual last activation is Strange Lady. Comes out of nowhere, and there's nothing that can be done about it.
Yeah, that's the spicy.
Not to mention, with the totem's strange behavior ability is fucking insane because it lets you take actions over and over again. So I have, out of nowhere, made my totem walk like 12 inches across the board and interact to drop a scheme marker in the end phase to be able to snag outflank. And being able to obey the totem out of nowhere and do more actions out of it over and over again with strange behavior is fucking insane. It's absolutely cracked.
Also a shout out.
A super high skill cap play, so like that's a thing.
Also a shout out to her being a really expensive but good tech piece against anti-obey, basically.
Yeah. Also
the other thing, I mean, she could be, if you're leaning into like an offensive poison strategy, I could see her being hired out of keyword in McMorning to get the distracted, to really neuter their offensive ability. Plus, it's always nice having an obey on some bisections to do oozing mass. I mean, that you can really start to ramp up some of those movement duels and poison and everything like that. So,
this lady may be strange, but I wouldn't
11 points a lot. 11 points a lot, but
that's the one downside is it's expensive.
Yeah, but I think she's going to be worth it. So I think I'm going to put her in A because I think you auto hire her every time in Seamus in every.
I think she's the lower. I think she's so far the back end of the bus on A. Opinion.
I think she just barely squeaks into Molly 2. Molly 1 for sure, a little bit, and then Molly 2 all the time. I think you need more help in that.
Yeah, I think she's back end of the bus on A.
The one thing I would say with Seamus, as much as I like this model, I do think Seamus is a very flexible master, right? There are some matchups where I'll go into a matchup and say, I don't plan to attack. As crazy as it is.
Yeah, you're just going to,
you know what I mean? I mean, you can look at it and say, I don't really want to have a bubble. I'm not playing a bubble game. And if you're not going to do that, it's hard to justify 10 points for a self-obey.
If you're not trying to pick fights, that's a really good point, Joe. I think, especially with a model like this that's expensive, knowing when not to hire it is just as important as knowing when to hire it. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, fair enough. So are we comfortable with keeping her A, or you think we're going to drop her to B?
I think back end of bus on A is fine. She's good.
I think
this model's good.
Yeah, fair enough.
She proves otherwise.
Yeah, so let's talk the other forgotten Red Chapel model, Keepside Strangers. So this is a 7 cost, 7 health model. It has 5s across the board, move 4, which is kind of bad. Their fading ability, though, is Fanatic. They gain 1 shielded. They have hard to kill. They have strength in numbers, so they get plus flips to damage while they're above half health, or half or more health. So 4 or more. And they also have Sidekick, which is like the Kruligan's ability, but a little bit less good. So at the start of this model's activation, it can discard a card to place itself into base contact with a friendly non-minion that shares a keyword with it within Aura 12, which gives them a shielded because it's a discard. They have a 1-inch melee attack that's stat 5, which is kind of bad, but theoretically, defense, it's against defense, but it's 2, 3, 4 in poison. It has a crow for blank stare, which is you discard a card, they gain slow and discard a card, and a mask for confused feelings where they gain the distracted, which has a lot of Seamus and distracted synergy. They have a really good ranged attack, which you might recognize for Ma Tucket, which is called Handful of Snakes. It's an 8-inch 6 against defense, which is very good. And remember, if they're above half health, it's plus flips to damage with a blast on every damage track. 2 blast, 3 blast, 3 blast, and models damage get poison. I have used this model to crazy effect, getting plus flips on the damage, beating by 1 at stat 6, and then blasting 3 damage onto 4 models with poison on each of them. Plus, there's a ram trigger for if they're distracted, the target will take more damage. And then there's 2 different aura bonus abilities that do opposite things. So Serene Silence is until the end phase, friendly models within range discarding cards causes shielded +1. With a ram trigger for discard a card, friendly Strange Lady within range takes an action, which if you're hiring both of them is very good. But it means that all of Molly's triggers in the aura, especially when Molly uses her bonus action in the beginning, just gives them all shielded, which makes her crew way more survivable. It's not a great range though. It's only 6, but it's sort of useful in the early rounds. And then suffocating.
It's still a really good ability that just like pulses defensive
no, it's
value.
Actually, who's gonna say no to a bunch of shielded for stuff you're already doing?
It's really good. It's good.
And then lastly, she has Suffocating Sound, which is her other aura. They both need a 6 to go off suitless. But until the end phase with Suffocating Sound, after an enemy model within range pitches a card, it gets distracted, which is potentially relevant if you're like meleeing people with Blank Stare. And it has a crow trigger for discard a card. 1 enemy model within range must discard a card or gain slow. So a lot of hand pressure. Although that being said, both of these abilities do require you to be pretty close to probably like the action, and a 7 health, albeit shielded, hard to kill model is going to probably not be getting his strength and numbers plus flips too long if you're having him up near the action, because they're kind of fragile, and at defense 5 for a 7-stone model, maybe not as solid. So Joe, what do you think? These freaky cultists, the Keepside Strangers, what do?
I don't know. I don't really like this model. I got to be honest. I mean, my first impression was not. I'm not super impressed. I mean, let's start with what I like. Okay. Sidekick is a nice ability.
For sure.
It's in Red Chapel. You basically have one mobile model, which is Seamus, and everybody else kind of slogs up the board for the most part. Bet is fairly mobile, but she's sometimes higher anyway. So like, it's nice to have another model that can just proc his own shielded to teleport up the board. And I could see some plays where you get him up to the board on the second activation and then blast into your opponent's unpack with poison. That could be very nice.
Yep. That's the success that I've had with them for sure.
Yeah. Handful of Snakes is a nice attack, stat 6, double blast on the severe. Here's why I don't like it. I think after the first turn, I don't really think you're getting a lot of utility about the fact that it blasts. I mean, it doesn't ignore friendly fire. So if you are leaning into the bubble game, you're going to be on negatives there. I kept going on what I liked, and then I immediately went.
Joe, when you say the bubble game, basically what you mean is taking advantage of Why Hello Love and out of activation movement to get free attacks out of Seamus and proc all of these advantages when your stuff uses lures and take by the hand.
Where do I want? I'm trying to think like, where do I want this model? Right. So if you're going to try and utilize its tactical actions, you need to have it somewhat close. Red Chapel doesn't really discard cards on their own, so you're not going to get a lot of shielded out. You may get it defensively if someone is making you discard, but you don't really do it a lot. And also, I don't like the Suffocating Sound bonus because you don't control your opponent discarding, right? And Red Chapel generally, outside of a couple Blank Stare triggers, is not causing your opponent to discard. We will get into that a little later on some of the fungal models, but so you can't really force your opponent to be discarding cards to proc this distracted if you're trying to do an Alone in the Dark, or actually that's the aura thing. The other Seamus 2 ability, that gives them if it pings them for a damage if they get distracted. I don't know. I just don't. Yeah. I don't see a lot. I'm looking at this at cost 7. Yeah, there are a couple nice things. It has a nice gun. It has some utility, mobility with Sidekick. It's hard to kill. I think its offensive attack is not great. Defense 5. I mean, it is cost 7. You can't ask for the moon. I'm just thinking, like, am I taking out one of my normal pieces? For example, like a Bell with Grave Spirit's Touch. that can have move utility and provide focus to my unpack, I don't know if I'm doing that.
Yeah, which is the same points cost, right?
It's really interesting. This conversation is super interesting because I feel like where we're gonna arrive at is Strange Lady is a good model, really shines in Red Chapel. Keepside Strangers, in my opinion, this model in Molly is exceptional. I kind of agree with your take. I agree with your take in Red Chapel, Joe. I having played it a bunch now, I've basically the play pattern that I've done with it now has been try to get a sneaky blast off on someone by accident, overcommit, and then on turn 2 they kill the strangers. Is like kind of how it's happened to me a bunch.
And it's probably a play style thing. I mean, I can definitely see it in Molly is having a lot of utility as more of a supporty piece. It's kind of
a supporty piece that the Kruligans can blink to as well.
Yep.
So it gives you like a double blink, and it gives you this crazy level of agency over the board to have this model with teleport that Kruligans can themselves teleport to.
Yeah. Being able to sidekick further and then do what you're going to do on your turn.
Like,
and then be able to
Brandon, am I off base here on that take for the Molly crew?
Not at all. I think this model shines much deeper into Molly than it did in, because the thing that I'm always on the lookout for on a Molly crew is deciding what models I'm going to take that are non-minion keyworded models, and this fits that bill. It is somewhat hard to remove, and it can put out damage, which are all things that Molly wants. Because blasting a bunch of people, it's like, 2-3-3, it doesn't sound like a crazy damage track, but if you're going to blast onto things and then give them poison as well, it's sort of like it's a 3-4-4. And like, I think Molly has a lot of different ways you can play her, but I think that this model is definitely more of a Molly. I don't think it's always a higher end Molly, but I think it's definitely very good in Molly, at least Molly 1. Molly 2, your mileage may vary, but who even knows with Chaotic Conductor?
I mean, I can't think, like, if I had a high ram in hand, I mean, the idea of having another gun that could do min 3 or min 4 even, with distracted with unexpected ferocity and Seamus would be nice.
Sure. Yeah.
But I would agree with you guys. I think this is largely a forgotten model. I think it's probably don't hire in Red Chapel.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it gets better if you're also hiring the Strange Lady, right? Because
that's true,
right? Because they have synergy together.
Take an action with Serene Silence. The thing is, I would look at that and almost say I don't even want that bonus action.
Yeah. In general, with Seamus, you don't want that bonus action. You want the other one because you want to make them with the plethora of triggers that you have to make them discard cards. Maim, Madame Sybil has Maim on her attacks. Everyone else has, and it's mostly crows too, which is weird because you don't really have access to a lot of card draw. You're in a position where I think it's just sort of has a lot of scornergy in Seamus, which is like a weird War Machine term that means like anti-synergy. Like it doesn't really, it's like all the tools are there, they're just misaligned, so they don't go together and it doesn't work out. But I think in Molly, so I'm going to put him at the top of B for now. I think that's probably
okay.
I think this is one of the true examples of like a split ranking where like, it I just think really Molly, shines.
If it were just a Molly model, I think it might be A. And maybe low A, high B. But in Seamus, she's just so not. I just don't think you're.
Well, okay. The only other thing I want to mention here as a Seamus hire is that within Seamus, it is good if you know you're going against Bubble Cruise.
Sure.
And you'd happen to be running Seamus. You're like, all right, I guess I'll take an in keyword teleporting blast mechanic. Like shit, I'll smoke him if you got him.
Yeah, you get a focus on this guy.
Like an in keyword tech pick in Seamus against.
I mean, you don't have a lot of blasting. There's some utility there.
Yeah, exactly. But again, I agree with your take, Joe. I agree with your level of unenthusiasm within Red Chapel, but I also agree with Brandon's take of holy shit, this is spicy nonsense in Forgotten.
Yeah, I really like this model in Molly. Pending further testing, obviously.
I don't think
these are hot takes, so.
You're never taking this out of keyword, I don't think.
No, there's no way. You're never hiring this model out of keyword. So let's talk the Resur starter box.
Ooh, this is such a spicy one.
A series of spicy things. And I will say I was disappointed with one model, but not for what you think. But let's start off with the henchmen, Batsch and Amalie. So Batsch and Amalie are an 8 stone henchman with 8 health. They are defense 5, 6 willpower. They move 5. They have regen 1. They are hard to wound. They have endless waltz, which is a hell of an ability. After this model suffers damage from an enemy attack action, it may push 3 inches in any direction, which is really good. It's not as good as butterfly jump, but it does similar things.
Yeah.
And that's something we just don't fucking have in Resers at all.
Yeah, it's a less good butterfly jump that I'm thrilled to have.
Yeah, it's bargain bin. It's like, Mom, I want butterfly jump. No, we have
butterfly jump at home, Brandon and Joe.
But actually,
come on.
Once you make it to college, you sort of miss Mom's butterfly jump, and that's what Endless Waltz is.
Well, nobody makes butterfly jump like Mom, obviously.
Yeah. So. And then it has fruiting bodies. So enemies treat corpse markers and friendly scheme markers within Aura 8 of this model as severe terrain. Wild stuff.
That is significantly spicy and relevant text that doesn't matter until it does, and then oh boy does it matter. There are definitely some circumstances where you are littered with the battleground is littered with corpses, and that is going to fuck some people's days up. I know
you're in the middle of the car, but I played Landon today, and he, spoiler alert, killed old Hob before I activated with my model I was testing out. Thanks, Landon. I did put him right in his face. But all of a sudden, I went from no corpse markers on the board to like a bajillion right in the center of the board. And I was like, oh, now I get it. I was thinking of fruiting bodies at the time.
Yeah. And for those of you at home, Landon, in this case, is Pope DARPA. They are the same person.
Yeah.
Oh.
Confirmed. Pope Landon DARPA.
Pope Landon DARPA the third.
Who will be with Joe and I at the Rat Hole later in March. Okay, so Revolting Swipe is their melee attack. It's stat 6 against defense, which is great. It's 2, 3, 4, which is not, but it's got a Crow for Drain Magic, which is pretty good. Target pitches a card, and then this model may draw a card and then discard a card. Mushroom Cloud is their ranged attack. It's a stat 5, which isn't usually great, but it's against movement. It ignores concealment, and if the target is in severe terrain, because let's say they're in base contact with a corpse marker, then this action receives a plus flip to its duel. Target suffers 2 3 blast, and it has a mask for reposition and a ram for unexpected ferocity. Wow, it's like almost like it's designed to be with Ashes of Malifaux and
we'll
all the distracted bullshit. But hold the thought though, because we have Spore Spurt, which is a great bonus action. It's stat 5 against defense. The target must discard a card. If the target is engaged by a fungal friendly model, it gains distracted 1, and there's a ram for be careful. Button. This trigger can only be declared if a friendly Oskar is within Aura 6 of this model. After resolving, the friendly Oskar in this model gains shielded 1. Button is Amalie's nickname for Oskar, which you find in the lore if you buy this book, which you should do with our affiliate link, which will be linked below. And then lastly, the power of dance, which you might recognize from being one of the most bullshit abilities on the fucking Carifi duet. But this is a pulse 3. It's stat 6. You need a 12 for it to go off, and it has a built-in crow. Friendly models within Aura 3 heal 2, which is nuts. But its built-in trigger is enemy models within range have to pass a TN12 willpower duel, or this model may move them up to 3 inches in any direction, ignoring severe terrain, such as corpse markers and scheme markers. There's also a tome trigger for Fancy Feet, which is choose up to 2 markers in range, move the chosen marker up to 3 inches in any direction, ignoring severe terrain. Now, that has a lot of stuff that you can do. For one, there's a bunch of models in this faction that you can treat as markers. Mindless Zombies, Corpse Curator, which as a versatile henchman. Corpse Candles. As a versatile henchman, you can hire this out. But also, let's say you have some markers that are hazardous.
Sludge markers. Pyre markers.
Yeah, so many things. So Batsch Amalie, what do you think, Joe?
I mean,
excited for our starter box?
Oh yeah, I think it's a great model. I think it's great. Man. I mean, I'm not going to call it an auto hire, but I think it's a great model.
It has such a deep level of really interesting high ceiling play mechanics here
100%.
That I think when you master this type of model, this is the type of model rather, that is very hard to master, like its full capabilities and its full mileage out of it. But when you do, oh boy, is it like it goes from being subtly impactful to when you're playing this model to 100% of its abilities. Oh gosh, does this feel like it's going to be strong?
Yeah, I think I think what I like about this, all right, first of all, it's 8 cost, versatile. You can fit this into any list.
Mhm.
right? And I think it does synergize and fit in with every master.
Yeah,
So
it's scarily synergistic with all of Resers. Like
Yeah.
And it
every
doesn't
single
just die.
master,
Yeah.
it
Its
has
stats are
something
good.
here
Yeah.
and there to fit in with each of them.
Oh yeah, its stats are respectable. It's, you know, hard to wound, regen 1. It can use stones. I think if we just start like with Red Chapel, it's nice to have some hand pressure. I mean, Spore Spur, Drain Magic. It's, you know, typically Seamus gets the 6 cards he's dealt. He doesn't really draw many unless he kills something that turn with the Whisper, and they don't really pressure the opponent's hand. So it's nice to do that. There's obviously some distracted synergy with Mushroom Cloud. It's a nice move attack, which you don't have in Keyword, you know, so that could potentially be relevant. But the real nice thing is the power of dance. I mean, this is it's a tactical action. It's not a bonus action. You can do it twice. It's a pulse heal. It's great. And that, I mean, obviously that fits in every keyword of pulse heal. But what I like about I mean, this is a tanky model comparatively. The other healing options you have are Nurse, Gravedigger. Both of these get one shot in the meta, right? For the most part, right? So
yeah,
it's not going to die in one hit. You can get in and heal too. And the heal has 2 triggers that are relevant in a lot of cases. I would love some TN12 willpower duels on negatives for somebody in a Seamus bubble to move 3 inches and generate a whole bunch of stuff, right? Yeah. I would love in Riva, you know, moving pyre markers, moving corpse candles, additional healing. Revenant's got a lot of healing already, but that's still good. I mean, Returned, you're proccing a bunch of extra heals. You're proccing Athrax Shielded in a lot of ways. So you're just helping out a lot of things. Tormented and Urami have a lot of move attacks, and give out Staggered, so the Mushroom Cloud becomes pretty good. I mean, this is, I like it a lot, right? I like it a lot.
Yeah. And like, you know, Castor, like you pulse out 2 healing to everybody in the first turn for your unpack, and then all of your models get to do crazy shit, right? Yeah. Like you literally overhealed them all.
Yeah. The one thing, I mean, with Seamus in particular, I mean, there is a little bit of counter synergy with the fruiting bodies, this making things severe, because you do a lot of lures, a lot of beckoning calls, you know, a lot of pushes and things. So when you can't move those models as far, you lose a little bit of agency, because it's not a may treat, right? They have to treat it as severe. So depending on the board state, you know, you may actually handcuff yourself a little bit, but it's a relatively low, you know, corner case problem probably. So
yeah. I mean, I think in terms of design space for the versatile starter box henchman, you really want the starter box models to be takeable in every crew, because that is the starting point for the faction, and then you build off of it.
Yeah.
And I think that they've knocked it out of the park.
I think a great model.
Yeah, I think we're gonna slam him this couple right at the back of A. I don't think necessarily auto hire. I mean, we could maybe do B, but I don't think necessarily even auto hire. But I think that they're just very good and can fit in almost any situation. And I think there's a consideration.
There's an outside scenario here where potentially they could be your master, and then you take Oskar and the Dapperlings, and then you fill it out with like other OOKs.
Or other versatile models that we'll talk about in a minute that have insane synergy with them. There's so many things. So I'm gonna put her there, and we'll move unless you guys disagree with that.
No, I think like solidly kind of near back end of A, but like firmly in A is where I would put this. Like they've earned their seat on the A bus.
Joe, you think so?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Oskar, their henchman. Their enforcer is a 7-stone enforcer with 7 health. He's got defense 4, which makes me a little sad. Or Button. I mean, his name is Button.
Yeah, Button.
So this boyo is he is defense 4, which makes me a little sad. Willpower 5, but he's armor 1 and hard to wound, which I think is fine. And he's got regen 1. And then also we're gonna see a new ability called Network of Mycelium. So at the start of his activation, if a friendly master or henchman is within aura 6, draw a card. Which, you know, Batsch and Amalie, that's one. But also whatever master you hire him in. If it's Batsch and Amalie, then you may have either this model or that model take an interact action, ignoring engagement. And considering that this guy is sort of a beater that you want like right up in people's faces, that's really, really strong, especially if you're near the henchman. He's got a 1-inch stat 6 melee that's a 2/3/5, but it has Siphon Life for +1 damage, +1 heal, which helps with the being low defense but armor hard to wound. He has Mushroom Cloud again that Batsch and Amalie have, except instead of the 2 triggers they have on it, he has 1 trigger, which is a tome for draw out secrets. He has the same bonus action Spore Spurt, but instead of Be Careful button, he has Siphon Life. So again, it does +1 damage and he heals 1.
And it's built in.
And the Siphon Life on this one is built in, which is great. So his bonus action should ideally be healing him every turn, unless you use the other one, Smell the Roses. Target a marker or a friendly fungal model. Until the end phase, the area within or 3 of them is treated as severe terrain. Friendly models may ignore this. So, if they want to get through Oskar, he picks himself, or he picks any marker, plops it into severe. So, he's an interesting model. He's certainly, I think, on face value, not nearly as good as Batsch and Amalie, because he's a little bit easier to hit, he's a little bit easier to kill. He's not a henchman. But he's got a bunch of healing, and he does stuff. I don't know, Joe, what do you think? Oskar?
I like this model too. I mean, I think the fungal stuff, it all
Oscar's
has
good.
His attack's good. I think Smell the Roses is good to generate positive flips for Mushroom Cloud around where you're trying to throw that into to get some blasts.
Because it's 3 off the target, right? Or a 3 from the target. So if there's a corpse even nearby, you Smell the Roses and then Mushroom Cloud them.
Right. Yeah. I love ranged Drought secret triggers. They're really nice. So, I mean, I looked at this and the first thing I wrote down is ranged Drought secrets for 2 damage attacks. I'm not even thinking about attacking, enemy models. It's just, I've got a guy standing where he needs to drop a ski marker for 2 damage. I can put one right there.
Yeah.
And it ignores concealment. Right, so now
it's also worth calling out that both Oskar and Batsch and Amalie have Mushroom Cloud. So you can go with Oskar, Smell the Roses, and then immediately dump Mushroom Cloud into whatever you're dumping it into. And then if the thing is already activated, then you go Batsch and Amalie and then just target their Mushroom Cloud into it.
Yeah. Plus the also synergy of Draw Out Secrets means within Batsch and Amalie's 8-inch aura, it's severe too.
Yeah. Right.
Which they're now in base contact with. So even if you don't Smell the Roses, if you Mushroom Cloud with the trigger twice, the second time it's at a plus flip.
It's the Reser version of You Got Peanut Butter in My Chocolate, which is like, you got undead magic in my
severe
also
terrain,
undead magic severe terrain thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did it.
I typically don't play a bunch of like versatile out of keyword stuff. So I'm thinking like, 8 plus 7 plus 1 or 2 of the minions. I mean, you're talking about half your list is all fungal, but I like Oskar. I think he's a good model. He's got a great attack. He wants to be in the mix. I think he's going to be harder to put down than people think. If you don't get him in 1 activation, he's going to heal. He's probably around Batsch Amalie. That's going to heal quite a bit. I don't know. It's a good model. I think it's a good model. Is it a great model? I don't know if it's great, but it's good. I mean, I'd put him there.
Yeah, how do you feel about
durable? He's also just like durable. I think this guy's top end of B, bottom end of A, behind Batsch and Amalie in A, in A.
Certainly his stock goes up quite a bit when you're hiring with Batsch and Amalie, but then we are looking at 15 stones worth of models, right?
He's back. I think he's back. I think he's the back end of the bus on A.
Yeah.
I think if your opponent doesn't declare Transmortis, I mean, I don't know how many people are teching armor piercing against Resers.
Yeah, like no one.
We'll see this later when we get to another model, but it's nice to have a model with armor 1, right? And then the hard to wound makes it more likely that they're hitting min damage, so probably someone's doing 1 or 2 damage a pop at the most. And it's just going to take a lot of effort to get them down.
Yeah.
This model's good.
Yeah, and he draws a card.
Really solid.
I mean, I'm going back to the Seamus comment. Like, it's nice to get a card.
Yeah.
They're not. Obviously, Transmortis has no issue with card draw. Forgotten has no issue with card draw. But
Red Chapel wants it. So does Kurai. Kurai wants it.
Oh yeah, Revenant wants it. There's a lot of keywords that are starved for cards. Obviously, McMorning 2 doesn't need it, but
Molly doesn't really need it. But like, again, there's synergies all over the place woven into this entire core box. But let's talk about the last step in the core box, the Dapperlings. So this is a 5-stone minion too. They have 4 health, and their defense 4, which sort of blows. But they're willpower 5. They don't move very fast. They move 4, and they have hard to wound and regen 1, but they also have latch on, which means enemy models in base contact suffer -1 to defense. And it's really important with latch on to note that stacks. It's not an aura ability. So you can have both of them, both of your Dapperlings, and it's -2 defense, which is wild. The thing that makes them a little wild
Littering and
what?
It's from Super Troopers where they get pulled over.
Okay.
All right, I'll tell you that the punchline is that you're going to say they also have Demise Eternal, which makes them extra spicy.
No. And finally, they have Demise Eternal, which once per turn, when they die, makes them extra spicy. You're not wrong. When they die, after this model is killed, it may discard a card. If it does so, it heals 4, which is their full health, right? This is Jackalope levels of bullshit, Demise Eternal. They can't do it multiple times per turn.
I love these guys. I love them.
Am I ranking this guy compared to Leftovers or no?
I mean, no, that's not fair.
Okay.
But so the backside of their card, they have an okay melee attack. It's not going to hit very frequently. It's stat 4, but it does have built-in dismember, which is cute. It's a 2/3/4 stat 4 against defense. But they also have a tome trigger for grab on, which slows and ends this model's activation. We see Spore Spurt again, although it's stat 4 this time and there's no triggers. We have Creep Along, which is a great bonus action. On a 6, they get to move their move, which is 4, towards a friendly model in line of sight, which, like, in some cases, especially late in the game, can be interact, like Creep Along interact. But they also have Fungal Bloom. So target a marker or another friendly fungal model. Enemies within pulse 2 of the target take a TN11 defense duel or take 2 damage. With a built-in trigger for strong winds, push the target up to 2 inches away from this model for each tome in this action's final duel total to a maximum of 6. I don't know how you actually get 3 tomes on this, because they don't make tomes and you can cheat 1 and then there's 2, but I don't know. That's what we got. It's up 4 wins goal and bullshit, probably. But whether they pass the defense duel or not, right? You're targeting your push the target. There's no target. Target a marker or another friendly. Oh, it pulses off them. Oh yeah. So it's on a 5. It helps. It's an AP to help your marker move your marker around or your fungal model.
Yeah.
Really, they're 5-stone minions with hard to wound, latch on, and Demise Eternal.
Right, and yeah, I mean, basically the back of card stuff, like your attack, if it hits, you probably had nothing better to do, right? Yes. Like, I mean, it's significant, right? Yeah. So it can drop scheme markers. I mean, Fungal Bloom is nice to move Oskar or Batsch Amalie up, or you're moving. Again, if you're taking in another keywords, you're moving pyre markers, you're moving corpse candles, you're moving mindless zombies, things like that. It's I think if you happen to have a tome in hand, a 5 or tomes or better, you get a 4-inch push. That's not nothing from a 5-inch model or a 5-cost model to move a better model 4 inches. It's fine. I think Latch-On's great. I think Demise Eternal on a cost 5 model is pretty good. Yeah.
I know Doug is
that's
a huge fan.
Core, like that sentence right there, Joe, is like the core of where I think the power of this model is.
Oh yeah.
It's the first, like, I haven't really seen too many what I would call tar pit models in Malifaux because of the nature of Malifaux. Like, if you spend AP at something in an aggressive manner enough times, most of the time shit dies. And it's kind of hard to strike the balance of this is tar pity and cheap and throwawayable, but also annoying. And this is the first time that I've felt like I can look at a 4-stone, 5-stone model and be like, this is a legitimate tar pit model. Yeah. Unless they have a fast answer for it from an anti-demise tech standpoint. And if you see that, just for the love of God, don't just jam them at the line with it if you see anti-demise tech. But if you don't see anti-demise tech, jam them at the line with it, please.
dude.
I mean, the
Jam
thing is,
all of the nerds at the line with all of the Dapperlings.
Yeah, dude.
It's movement. The one thing is, like, we have to restrain ourselves a little bit. It's move 4.
But it's move 4 times 3 on its first turn, as long as it's not the first model to activate. It's it's creep along, move 4, or creep along, move charge.
I understand. I'm just saying, if you are moving other things, like if I have movement, out of activation movement in my list, I'm probably not using it on a Dapperling, right? So you're talking about turn 2, turn 3. This is mid game, positioning game.
Unless you're on wedge.
Yeah, that's true.
Unless you're on wedge.
I don't look. It's a 5 cost model. It's pretty good for 5 cost.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I just really like these models because I've wanted a model that does this for a very long time. And now that I have my hands on it, I'm very excited. But I kind of agree with you, Joe. I think it kind of is in the middle to frontier of sometimes higher.
Yeah, we've what have we said for at least, I mean, I've been playing this game about 4 years, and people have said this to me for the entire 4 years. What's the problem with 5 cost models?
They die all the time.
They die, right?
Yeah.
Even if they have good things, someone spends 1 activation and they're gone. Well, it's hard to do that with this model.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
You get to utilize whatever positive benefit it's going to survive. You could have nothing else on the front of its card, and it's probably worth 5 points.
Yeah, it could be a warm body, well, rather a cold body, da-dung-ching, on the battlefield that like interacts and scores and doesn't die, and there's your value also.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I think, in GG3, this model might have been way higher. Because the gaining grounds, if you want people to just be there and not die for 5 stones, is for a significant model is really good. But if you're hitting like a min 3 beater into this guy, or you just yeet him into a min 3 beater, we're talking a single attack brings them a single min attack, because it's hard to win, brings them into 1 unless they're burning focus, in which case, really, haven't you already won? If they're burning focus and cheating, and then a hard to, Demise Eternal heals them back up to 4 after their second attack, and then they have a third attack, which if it hits min, we're talking 4 attacks from like a good beater to do anything. So like, Peacekeeper can guarantee 1 round these, but like, holy shit, dude, if you're wasting a Peacekeeper on this 5 stone model, let's go all day.
Yeah, I really like these guys for
I
their
don't know.
use case.
I mean, I think the secret, I think Fungal Bloom is going to end up being the reason why people take this model.
No, Fungal Bloom also very good.
How many times have you lost a game or a point because a marker was 1 inch further or away, or a model was 1 inch away from where it needed to be? I mean, I can think many times I've missed out on points.
Yeah.
So
plus, end of the round, especially like when you be activating these for scheming bullshit purposes, you pulse out a defense duel and they flip low, there's nothing they can do. They're not going to waste their like card or 2 that they need. It's possible this even pulses out damage. And if you're pushing a hazardous marker, forget about it. But I think that's enough on the core box, or in the starter box, I should say. These models are super good. I can't wait until
the box is hype, though. We all agree that the box in general, if you're a Reser player, it's worth picking up this box almost regardless of like what
I will say,
you run.
I'm very sad, because I was hoping that the Dapperlings were going to be like little tiny, like adorable mushroomy boys, and that's not really what they are. They're like researchers, but I don't know. We'll see. We don't know what the other one looks like, so maybe it'll be awesome.
No, I mean, I think you're right. I'm pretty sure that the lore behind it is that the Dapperlings are the researchers' assistants that came back to life when Batsch and Amalie resurrected.
Yeah, they're all from the first time they went into Malifaux, when the breach first opened in the 1800s, and it's their story's also super cool. It's not a lot, but check it out. Let's talk about the next pair of keywords: Retainer and Revenant, the Ghost Eater.
Joe, I'm so curious about your Reva. I think I know what you're going to say.
I'm very excited
I think I know what you're going to say, Joe, but I'm so curious about what you think about this model, because I really respect your Reva game. You got some squirrely Reva game in you, my friend. So I'm curious about what you think about this in Reva.
Yeah, and this is that's like, that's what I got. So, all right, Ghost Eater. This guy's an 8 stone henchman. Enforcer that's attuned. And he has 8 health. He has 5s across the board, defense, willpower, move at 2 size, but he is attuned. He also has Empower, so friendly models with an aura 5 that spend soul stones during a duel get a plus flip. He's hard to wound. He's got the final veil from Reva, so he heals when a model within 6 dies, which will be very relevant momentarily. And then he is in the spirit world. So at the start of this model's activation, it can discard a card to summon a ghost light within Aura 3. Which is the other boils that come in this box. Which this box, by the way, is already in the wild. You can just get them now. Order them through our affiliate code through the Wyrd website. That'd be great. On the back of his card, he's got a 1-inch melee that's stat 5 against defense. That's a 2/3/5 with the Exorcism trigger, which if the model has a summon upgrade, it is killed. Very, very strong. Not a great stat, but, if it happens, it happens. Flesh Construct against McMorning, fucking go away. He has Spirit Barrage, which is a great attack. Stat 6 against Willpower. It ignores friendly fire. It's a 2/3/4, which isn't super strong, but it has Dismember, which is super relevant in a bunch of ways with either of the... Well, less probably with Retainer than it is Revenant, but super relevant in Revenant. And a Mask trigger for Spiritual Weakness. Once per turn, kill a Ghost Light within 3 of the target, and the target gains this model's choice of Burning 4 or Injured 2, which are both spicy as hell. We'll talk more about that in a second. Lastly, he's got two tactical actions. They're both bonus. He has Consume Essence, which is friendly only. This model heals an amount equal to the target's health. Kill the target, ignore its demise abilities. So you can eat zombies to heal up. And there's a Crow trigger that is built in for friendly Ghost Light only. If you eat it, draw a card. And also keep in mind, if it's within 8, it's probably going to be within 6, which means a model will be dying, which means you'll heal 1. Lastly, he has Instill Youth. So on a 6, within 8 inches, targeting any other model, it heals 1, 2, 3. If the target has an attached Reliquary upgrade, because it's a Yanlo model, it heals an additional +1 and may end in condition. Note that that's not friendly, so you can heal your opponent's upgraded Yanlo models for an extra 0.2, which is great. But the point of this is, on a tome, Blinding Light, friendly only. If you heal a friendly model with it, the target suffers 2 irreducible damage, and then summon a Ghost Light into base contact with the target, which is wild. So he can summon 2 Ghost Lights a turn, 1 from the bonus action, 1 from the Spirit World. You can theoretically hire them, but that's a lot of stuff. Do you want to just go over the Ghost Lights real quick, because I feel like you kind of need them in context?
Yeah, this is a package. This is a package. Let's just talk about them as a package. So yeah, I think you do Ghost Light. So the Ghost Lights are 3 Soul Stones, 4s across the boards. They have Consume Soul, which is their wild ability. I'll talk about that last. So they're incorporeal, insignificant, and mindless. So when you summon them, your opponents don't get pass tokens. They can't ever interact. And they take 1 less damage to a minimum of 0 because they're incorporeal from attacks. They have 2 health. But you're not really going to hire them because you can summon 2 a turn with this one model. And they have Consumed Soul. When a friendly model within Aura 3 uses or discards a Soul Stone, which remember, if they're within Aura 6 of, or Aura 5 rather, of the Ghost Eater, they'll get a plus flip to that duel as well. They can add a Soul Stone back to their Soul Stone pool, and if they do, kill this model, which also will kill a model, which is killing a model is killed. Final Veil, right? And possibly other things, but we'll stop it there. Their attacks are bad. They have a stat 3 0-inch melee that does 1, 2, 3 and burning. They have Path of Ashes, which is sort of maybe okay. It's a stat 4 against willpower, but the target gets a neg flip if they're in Pyre markers to give out 2 burning. Or with the Crow, they can give out Adversary Ancestor if you're playing in Yanlo. Otherwise, that doesn't matter. And then their bonus action is target must have an attached Reliquary upgrade, which is only Yanlo models, and it gives the target take a new Guardian action on a suitless 5. So you get to move the things around. So the big deal and the big loop here is that he summons a bunch of Ghost Lights. Those Ghost Lights replenish your Soul Stones, and especially in Reva, but also with just the Ghost Eater, that's more models dying. That's more models that are are killable for corpse things. That's more models that are doing, all kinds of shenanigan-y nonsense. And it's really strong, right? Joe, what do you think? Tell me what you think.
Specifically, if I'm thinking of Ghost Eater, I think it's a good model.
I think it's a good model too.
I like a lot of things on it. I guess having a lot of cheap models on the board to proc Final Veil really helps the keyword survive. Mm-hmm. They're not that far away from each other, especially Riva 2 likes to kind of stay in this one moving mass of, bodies. So having all these things proc all the time is really going to be, because it heals everybody, right? It doesn't just heal one person. Each one that dies heals everybody with the final veil. So it's going to be
within 6 for just a point every time.
Right, and it's going to be a lot of healing, and especially you get to control a lot of times when these ghost lights die, so you can kind of engineer it to be there when you need it.
Yeah.
I really like the 12-inch Spirit Barrage. You don't have a lot of great ranged attacks in Riva. You have some 6-inch Breath of Fires. You have some 8-inch attacks. It's a good range attack to have that's not there. I was joking. I wish the Ghost Lights had the demise that gave him a pyre marker, but that's maybe me wishful thinking.
Holy crap! Are you kidding me? That would be.
What are your thoughts on this gentleman making lamp pad summoning within Reva 2 more accessible?
I wouldn't even say more. I would just say accessible.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Joe? I'm very curious what your perspective on that is. It feels like this trigger kind of makes it really easy for you to set up a lamp. You get. I'm sure you get it. What I'm asking, right? What I'm asking.
Yeah.
You.
I guess
I'm talking. I guess specifically for those at home, I'm talking about the mask trigger spiritual weakness that can give +4 burning to a model, which enables Reva 2 to rip it off to summon a lamp pad.
Right. So the thing is, I have always summoned the lamp pad anyway. I think it's just a question of,
Well, this makes it easier.
Yeah, it makes it easier for sure, because it doesn't have to be dead or close to dead already, because you're typically not getting more than burning 2 or 3, maybe health at the most. I think, that obviously the higher the emulate is, the easier it is to get it off.
Do you see it being a big deal, I guess, is my question to you, as like an experienced Reva player, either for immolate, like do you feel like that's a big deal? Because for me, on the outside looking in, it feels like it should be a big deal. But I don't know.
Whenever I've tried to lean into the summon lamp pad game, I tend to not have had as good of results with Riva. It's always kind of an incidental summon to me.
Yeah,
right.
Sorry, Joe.
Well, again, it's just that's the play style that I have. I'm not planning, I'm not doing a chain of a turn activation in order to get a lamp pad. I build it if it's the situation kind of dictates it, then I'm happy to do it, and I'm not going to say no. But usually I'm getting it as a second or third benefit of what I'm trying to do. But there's no doubt
this will change that.
It might. I mean, a burning 4 bomb is.
Do you think that changes that perspective?
Yeah. How far away does he summon this? All right. Summons the Ghost Light within 3.
Yep, Aura 3. So about 4 inches, because it's a 30 mil off of the edge of Aura 3.
Yeah, I guess, when I looked at this, I hadn't even really. But no,
the big one though is
I like the injure. I like the injure. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, the big one is Instill Youth, because Instill Youth's trigger, Blinding Light, lets you summon it off of any friendly model, in base contact with any friendly model within 8 inches.
Right. Yeah, so that's
9 inches away.
You can bomb these dudes. You can away. If you want, you can bomb these things, summon them and then shoot it from a pretty significant distance away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I guess whenever I looked at Burning 4 and I looked at Injured 2, and automatically I just was like,
your brain goes to Injured 2, right?
My brain goes to Injured 2. That's the one I want, because
Injured 2 is good. Don't get me wrong.
Injured 2 might as well say Injured Infinite, but yeah.
But I think that this Spirit Barrage trigger takes the ability to have to just be able to react and use summon a lamp pad when it's super convenient and everything.
It makes it proactive
to the ability to do it proactively. I tried it one time and it made it be able, because we've had this model for 3 weeks now, 4 weeks. I did it last week and I actually got to intentionally summon a lamp pad.
Yeah.
Which is something I've never been able to do before.
I would love to test that out a little bit, because do you understand what I was saying earlier?
Yeah.
I haven't been able to have good consistency.
Because it's hard. Because before then it's a lot of AP commitment and a lot of effort. So you identified that and you steered around it and you said, I'll take it when it's convenient, but I'm not going to plan for it because it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I get what you're saying.
I think that I guess the main part I like about, and also with the tune, right? You're basically building the mask in when you want it, right?
And if you're so inclined, kill a fucking spirit to do it, and then you get a plus flip on the spirit barrage.
Yeah, it's strong.
So
strong like
we're
ox.
talking about Riva 2 here. I also like it in Riva 1.
Oh, for sure.
Getting a corpse marker 12 inches up the board with a dismember trigger to arc Riva's min 3 attack through. Get
for sure.
Positives on feed on grief. Just the healing alone, I think there's a ton of utility. And again, it's only cost 8.
Yeah. And again, if you're doing the dismember, you again get plus flips on your stat 6 willpower tool. If you stone for the thing and then kill a ghost light next to him, which he summons at the beginning of his turn for free. And because it has oh no, never mind. It doesn't have that. I was going to say Riva, vampires, but
with Riva, I don't know about you, Doug and Brent, but when I'm making a list with Riva, I always find like the last model I put in, I'm like, I don't even really want it. I always wish there was something better.
Yeah, there's an empty space in your hole. Joe, are you saying there's an 8 soulstone sized hole in your heart?
There kind of
might just be filled by a ghost eater.
That's typically it's a 7 to 8 soulstone gap where I'm like, I really don't want another Draugr or another shield bearer or another upgrade and something. I might as well hire 3 enslaved spirits is usually what I do. But like,
oh man.
I think this is I think it's a great model. And I think the Ghost Light, the Ghost Light's nice. Obviously it's kind of attached at the hip to Ghost Eater. Now with we haven't talked much about Yanlo, but I actually like it in Yanlo too, or Yanlo as well.
Yeah.
The Ghost Lights.
Get it? You like it in Yanlo too, or Yanlo as well? See, you said you couldn't do puns, Joe. You're right on board, my man.
I know.
Killing it. There we go.
But obviously the Ghost Light is going to enable a lot of card draw and just a lot. I find myself when I'm doing the reliquary game, like sometimes you have to do a reliquary because you don't want to waste the action, but it's not exactly where you need it. Well, now it's great, right? You have a ton of extra minions that are around to rescue Yanlo 2 when someone inevitably kills your Kamino, or your Soul Porter or whatever. Now you have another minion that can kind of go and rescue him for a little bit or be in range, right? To do that.
Yeah, the only trick is that they're mindless with that, so you have to really plan around it because you can't summon one then activate it to do that. So but you're summoning them 8 inches up the board around your other stuff, right? So you're getting it around, and you're probably trying to heal, Yanlo or the Kamino anyway. So to throw a Ghost Light there, I like it. And obviously the card draw, right? So I don't think I've ever taken the new Guardian action on purpose anyway, in a normal game. So having something that lets me do that to now draw a card with the Yanlo 2 is great. I haven't played a lot of games with the Yanlo 1, so I can't really think of that much.
I don't have a ton of Yanlo 1 experience, honestly.
I own the models.
I think it's I think it's kind of a bummer that it's not adversary retainer, because then it could help the Ghost Eater himself in if you are playing both of them in Riva, because the Ghost Eater is not ancestor, just retainer. Yeah. So that's kind of a bummer, but I guess it's 3 costs to summon. It's not even going to be around more than 1 turn. It's fine.
Yeah. So I think that the question then is where we put in this ghosty boy. He's eating the ghosts and ghosting the eats,
I'd put him at top of B maybe, or bottom of A, somewhere in that range.
Top of B, back to A.
I think I like the top of A here, or the bottom of A here, mostly because I think that he provides so much utility to both flavors of Riva. You
probably are always hiring him.
Every Riva crew always.
Yeah.
And I think that you make a lot of good points for Yanlo, and I think that it doesn't matter what the opinion of Yanlo 2 is because nobody's ever going to play that master.
Okay. He's also just a solid model. Like even bereft of the.
Instill Youth is a great. Instill Youth is having a second Instill Youth, or having Instill Youth, either a second one or a first one is really good.
Yeah, you're
It's a
not wrong.
2/3/4 heal.
It's just a
For a
good heal.
6.
It's just a good heal for 8-inch for a suitless 6. You're not wrong. And
I think he's.
Yamo heals retainers and ends conditions on them, or anyone with reliquary upgrade, which is pretty strong.
I think he's back to the bus on A.
Yeah, and I think well, obviously we're putting Ghostlight in C. You're not going to hire this model. It's 3 stones. That's more stones.
Yeah, you're not hiring Ghostlights
for effectively a stone, right?
I just would like to point out again, not that I'm advocating for any nerfage, but this is for the mere cost of a Ghostlight, you could also have an enslaved spirit.
Yeah, and there's like if you're already at 3 enslaved spirits, maybe you'll hire a Ghostlight, but you're never gonna not hire an enslaved spirit over a Ghostlight.
I would be looking at what to do with 12 soul stones if I was even thinking about that.
Yeah, you're probably also doing that before you hire this model. So, but let's talk about our last pair of keyworded models before we talk about the other boyos. This is by far our longest one. I love this. It's because we're all Reser players, but it's fine. Okay, Kari Zotiko and the Ferryman. So Kari Zotiko is another henchman, our third one. If you're keeping track. Sorry, second, because the other guy's an Entombed Enforcer, but our third henchman. She's 8 stones with 7 health, 5s across the board. Incorporeal, peer through the fog, so she ignores concealment. Vengeance 1, torment, so she damages an enemy model with an upgrade. Tormented or not, you get to draw a card. And withering away, so enemy models within or 3 can't heal. Just flat out, they just can't. Wild. She's got a melee attack,
which in also many cases stops things like Demise Eternal, for example.
Yeah, it's super good. Also unrelated, well, very related. If you want to learn background of this model, you should buy this book, obviously, using our affiliate link. But this model is actually from Through the Breach, and I know Defective Dice ran the adventure where she's from in the Ferryman, so you should go check out his channel, which hopefully we'll link below and then do that. But so her melee attack is Stygian Hook. It's a stat 6 against defense, which is great. If it's targeting a tormented model, this model adds plus mass to its final
enemy
total.
Tormented.
An enemy torment. Well, yeah, you can't. Sure, yes, yeah, fair enough. It adds mass to its final duel total, and it does 2, 3, 4. It's got a ram trigger for if the target has an upgrade, +1 damage, and then it's got a mask that it can build in for push the target up to 3 inches in any direction, and then place Kari in base contact with that model.
Otherwise you'd be moving your own crew with that built-in mask.
Yeah, for damage. You're not wrong, but you can do it to the guilty. They're an enemy tormented model. Charon's Toll is an 8-inch stat 6 willpower attack. The target must discard a card and suffer 3/2/0 based on the value of the discarded card, which is deceptively strong because people aren't going to want to pitch their high cards, and they're probably going to take 2 damage most times. And then it has a built-in tome for Adversary Urami, which is obviously a huge Kirai thing. And she has a bonus attack for a 7-stat willpower attack that's within 8 inches, non-leader only, tormented or friendly Urami only. If the target is a friendly Ferryman, it adds plus Crow to this model's final duel total, and the target takes a general action chosen and controlled by this model. So it is you need a 5 of Crows, obey, basically. Which is wild.
I mean, most of the time I've played with these 2 models a lot, which is the Ferryman. Yeah. Most of the time you shoot the Ferryman and you don't need the Crow. That's kind of the point.
You don't even need the Crow, yeah. And then lastly, her tactical action is Twisty Misty. Twisted Mist and Twist Mist. Stat 6.
I think Twisty Misty attack. Is the superior.
Twisty Misty, yeah. It's a range 6 attack, or tactical action. You need a 7 for it to go off. The target heals 2 until the end phase enemy models treat the area within or 3 of it as concealing, which is just really fucking good. Healing's great, or concealing great. Joe, what do you think? Tormented Urami. This lady's got a hook.
I've only played these keywords a couple times, so I may not have got the 400 level math figured out on a lot of this, but
I got you, Joe. I have absurd reps with this crew, but I want to hear your take.
I think it's a nice model for 8 cost. I mean, I'm just looking at the card for 8 cost. 8's kind of in that range where you can fit it in most lists, right? I like that the Charon's Toll ignores concealment. You can do some good work with that. Built-in adversary on the Urami there. Silver Whistle is kind of interesting. I mean, it's not really an obey in the sense that it's just a general action, but late in the turn, if someone put a scheme marker in a critical spot and you're like, nope, pick it up for a 5 of crows, seems pretty good.
I mean, sure, but it's also a charge,
I've used it,
right?
to be totally honest, I've used it most of the time. What I use it for is to give the Ferryman a walkie for free, and then use the Ferryman's AP for other shit.
Yeah.
And then that way you just need a 5, unsuited 5.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
But,
I mean, but it is.
But it's also a charge.
You can
Can
use
I
it.
just say?
Yeah, you can also get a charge out of it. Wait,
You can get a
hold on.
charge, but it just
No, it takes a general action.
Yep.
You know, it's a general action charge,
Yeah,
which generates
charge.
a melee attack.
Yeah.
Yep.
You
It's
can
obey.
take charge with it.
I mean,
Can't
I
do the
like
rest
that
of the
it's
stuff
stat
printed on the
7,
card,
right?
but
They
It's
could
like a
have made
shitty
it.
obey.
They could have made it a stat 5, 10 TN or something like that, but it's stat 7, so obviously it can be used offensively if you need it, if you have the cards.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's fine. The anti-heal aura is obviously, your eyes go right to that, right? If you're in this keyword, it's nice to have something like that in the keyword.
And I mean, I will say it does lose a bit of its punch in Urami for sure, because Urami, outside of, unless you're hiring the Ferryman for his Tormented upgrade, you're not going to have any way to ever use it on enemy models. But in Tormented, you will. Like, it's already built in that you're going to put upgrades on them. So, I don't know, for what it's worth. Because it's friendly. It is Tormented or friendly Urami only.
Yeah.
So you can always do it on your models, as long as they're not out of
Oh,
game.
yeah, you're still talking about Silver Whistle. I was
sorry.
I was
Twisty
going back
Mist
to
is great.
the Withering Away
Withering Away's
aura
nuts.
heal.
Yeah, he's talking about the passive ability on the front, Withering Away.
Yeah, passive ability nuts.
I mean, between Incorporeal and Stones and Vengeance, I think it should survive enough to make use of that anti-heal aura. So,
Yeah.
So I've gotten in like 6 games with this model at this point, paired with Ferryman. And I can just say, so we talked about this a little bit in our Outcast video. If you guys haven't seen our Outcast video, go see that. It's probably going to be dropped before this video. As a person who's played a lot of Kurai, I mostly play Kurai 1 at this point. She has had a problem where she has not had amazing models to fill out lists. Joe talked about this a little bit before, where like he gets to a building point in his list and he's like, I have 8 stones, but like I don't really know what I'm going to do with Reva. Kurai has that problem and has had that problem for a really long time, specifically because as a summoner, she's kind of like a mid-range summoner where you get to do a bunch of mid to mid high-end range summons with very little effort, but you're shooting those summons onto the board, so you get to be very aggressive with them. Or traditionally, at least that's how I play her, specifically with Shikome and I always get the name wrong. The guy with Violent Ghosts, it's Gorios, right? Those are Gorios?
Gorios, yeah.
Yeah. So you shoot those up on the board and you jam them into your opponent's face. I need models to also just play the game of Malifaux with that aren't the summons. I usually fill out the list with Gweshin because I freaking love Gweshin. And I think in GG4, Gweshin are even better than they had been. But Kari Zotiko and Ferryman are both very cost effective for just the stats that these models are bringing. And in Kari's cost, because I am traditionally always bringing Kari and Ferryman together, that Silver Whistle is basically a free AP that you get to use onto the Ferryman for a 5. And then the other thing that she does really, really, really well is a core model for me is Jakuna Ibume, specifically because you get to go with Jakuna Ibume. You have lots of push movement in this crew. You put up her Hazardous Aura, and you put her in a place that makes her a fucking problem for somebody. And you know what's really annoying about Jakuna Ibume? She has Serene Countenance. But you know what's even more annoying about Jakuna Ibume is if she also has a bubble of Concealing and also a bubble of Hazardous. Welcome to the Hell Triangle. And like, you can just do that with Kari, and she sets up that play really easily, and it gives you this really, really defensive, hard to crack fuck you to your opponent that is a bubble of Hazardous, Concealing, and also the model has Serene Countenance on top of that. And because of those reasons, Your Honors, I would submit to you that Kari Zotiko is the bestest of girls.
Wild. Yeah, I mean, that seems pretty compelling. Especially, certainly for Kurai. And like, we've already talked a bunch about how I heard, stuff gets more offensive in Urami. In Tormented. I guess the question then is, where are we going to place this henchman?
I think she's, at least in my cry lists.
Yeah.
I like
hard auto include.
I just start lists with her and Ferryman.
Yeah. Do we think Tormented?
And Jakuna Ibume.
Joe, you probably have
Most
more Jackdaw experience than me. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, probably not. I've only played Jackdaw 3 or 4 times, so.
Oh, well, I don't know. I think I'm happy to put her at the end of A for sure. I think that the Ghost Eater is probably going to get higher and higher percentages of both crews, but I think that she's pretty likely good in both for sure.
She's a solid model. I can't speak.
She's a really good 8-stone henchman, and like Withering Away is just a nuts ability for a henchman that is potentially very survivable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't speak to the DAW stuff. I've only probably have like 3 or 4 reps on DAW total.
The bonus action obey is just so unbelievably good. I think, but also like, yeah. We'll put her there. We'll talk about the Ferryman. So this is a 7-cost enforcer with 7 health, 5s for defense and willpower, 6 movement. It's armor 1. It has the Depths of Malifaux, so it full out ignores severe and hazardous terrain, which is really, really strong. It's got Terrifying 10. It's not going to ever really happen if your opponent has any, cards in hand. But when they don't want to spend cards, sometimes they'll just flip low and fail. It has Torment, so if it damages models with upgrades that you placed or they did at hiring, you get to draw a card. And it has Vengeance 2, which is really, really good. It's got a stat 6 melee that's 2 inches at 245, which is like better valedictorian, with amazing triggers. Feast of Vengeance after killing Kirai heals 1, 2, 3, I guess friendly leader, but that's built for Kirai. Flay, which is just fucking ignore the negative flips to damage. You just get to cheat anyway. You still flip.
Flay is, I think, one of the most underrated triggers in the game.
Dude, Flay is so friggin' strong. And then Ram for way down, so if the target has an upgrade, +1 damage. So it turns this 2/4/5 into a 3/6/7. Or 3/5/6 rather. And then Lost in the Fog is ignores concealment. Target either gets too distracted or you can move it for. Most of the time they'll probably choose move it for. It's 5 against willpower, which isn't great, but it has 2 different crow triggers which are built in. Eerie Fog, which makes enemy models treat the area within aura 3 of the Ferryman as concealing, and You're Next. Enemy non-guilty only attach a black spot upgrade, which is crazy. And then lastly, Mark of Vengeance, which in Kirai is a dime a dozen. You have it on a bunch of, well, maybe not even a bunch, but you have it on a good number of models, which is a stat 5 willpower attack that says until the end phase, the target cannot heal, aka until the end phase, target Castor loses the game. And with a tome for adversary Rami. What? He does, Joe. Tell me I'm wrong. That's very funny.
I will not.
No. And then the black spot upgrade is nuts. It's called Catch of the Day. It does 3 things. So 1, it makes the model tormented. 2, it's marked for death. So at the end of this model's activation, 1 enemy model in its line of sight can move 4 inches towards it, which is just really strong. And then lastly, Soul for a Soul. So at the start of the model that has its activation, a friendly model with an aura 3 of that model may gain staggered. So this is one of your opponent's models. You put it on, one of their models can within aura 3 of that model can gain staggered. And if it does, pitch this upgrade. But let's keep in mind, we're talking, especially if you're playing it in Jackdaw, if you're gaining staggered and Montresor is on the field, you're going to have a bad time. In fact, I would argue that's probably a worse time than if you pizzaed when you should have French fried. All right, well,
neither of those situations are ideal, but one of those situations is just unrecoverable, and it's obviously probably both are unrecoverable.
Well, I mean, if you pizza when you should have French fry, you're gonna have a bad time.
You're gonna have a bad time.
You should know that. I guess Joe, what's your take on this here Ferryman?
So I was laughing as you guys were talking. My entire note sheet starts with "Love me a good flay trigger."
Yeah.
So,
let's go, Joe. Yes, Sensei Joe, we agree with you. Please. Go on.
I love that trigger. I love it a lot. It's on a great attack. 2-inch range. Who's gonna say no to that? Stat 6. It's got great triggers. It's a lot. Again, another theme. It's a 7-cost model. If you're playing in keyword, you're getting a lot of stuff. You're getting something that is pretty survivable. 7 health, armor 1 with vengeance 2, terrifying. You got a lot of text. I think it's a good model.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't play these 2 keywords a lot. They're probably the least. I have the least reps with these 2 of all of the other faction, but I think it's good.
Yeah. Doug, what do you think? The Ferryman. Obviously, we sort of talked a lot about.
I basically copy and paste my enthusiasm level when I was like just going off about the first portion of this keyword pair model. Copy and paste it, put it right onto the Ferryman. Amazing.
Yeah.
Honestly, love this model.
I think I'm just going to put Ferryman right behind Kari Zotiko at the end of A. I think that it is going to be a difficult time for you to not hire this, especially if you have Kari
Just
Zotiko.
To be clear, I just want to walk through what I generally use the Ferryman for in my games or have until this point.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing that I'm using the Ferryman for on turn 1 is after I load up my totem with fast, I start to use this to move the model. I try to usually if I can, I double tap the totem to try to get it into aggro strike position on turn 1 with fast. So you just jam an Akirio down somebody's throat and you just take out whatever model, not really whatever model you want, but a fasted Akirio that gets all of her AP into something with a hand that's supported by it is a lot of pressure and can kill most things because it's irreducible. So I'm generally using the Lost in the Fog action for the free movement on the Alpha Strike with the totem after I use Lost Love with the Burnout trigger to fast the totem. That's generally what I'm doing on my turn 1 play with this.
You could use that on your own guy. That's
that's
generally what I'm doing with the Ferryman on turn 1. Then absolutely everything Joe just said about the attack, because then you can move this model up the board and it's really, really annoying to hit. It's got vengeance, it's got terrifying, it's got armor, it's got depths of Malifaux. Man, it has a lot of sweet abilities on the front of this card. And then on top of it, it has a 2-inch stat 6 with fly.
Question on the upgrade here. So catch of the day. Can you use it when you're using a chained spirits or something?
In the
from Kari 2?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Can you use this to move a model through the model into base contact on the other side? Does that still count as toward?
Yep.
Yeah, you just pick points on the bases and move them into each other.
So you could use this upgrade to generate more chain spirits duels than on.
And I think that's partially the point also.
Yeah, one at the end of its activation with an incorporeal model. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you pick points on the base. So in this case, you'd pick the
you
back of the model you're moving and the point.
You don't even need to.
Or whatever.
You can do all kinds of bits, like
Right.
any circumference. You just have to go over it. There's anywhere on the circumference on the back
charges half. A model that hasn't activated, puts this upgrade out. They assuming it survives, they activate. Now your Ferryman floats through to the other side, generates another duel. Seems nice.
Yeah. Like basically, turn 1, I use it to load up the totem and be a bully with the totem, and then from there on, you just hit stuff with the claw and be annoying. And then you can also use, I feel like, honestly, 50% of my AP with this model has been using Lost in the Fog to reposition my own models, if I'm being totally honest with you guys. But also, it's a sweet attack. Also, it should go in the back of A.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love this model. It looks wild, too.
And it's only 7 stones. It's
it
like
came out. You can just buy this model. It's out now. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's only 7 soul stones. It's not crazy expensive.
Yeah. And like, again, Mark of Vengeance native keyword in Jackdaw is wild. Not being able to heal is a crazy ability in certain circumstances. And they both do this. Vengeance, it's nuts. The guy's nuts.
You know what occurs to me also,
really
actually,
hard to play against sometimes.
Where this is also probably really, really positive is it's a really easy, effective way to get your hanged up the board, because hanged are generally pretty slow. So that's
not
like
when they're lost in the fog and not.
Yeah, it's like a full AP value of movement out of the hanged for 4, because they move really slow anyway. So getting the hanged further up the board and into position really quick, so that they can use their AP on meaningful actions. That seems really strong. Also,
All right. We have 2 models left to talk about, which are literally the last 2 models from this book that we have to record videos on, which, don't get me wrong, I've loved it, but I'm excited to be done. 9 videos in one weekend is a lot. It's like 17 hours. It's like 20. I'm at like 23 hours of video recording so far. So
some say his mind was broken long ago.
My mind
Some say it broke during the process.
It did. It broke during this
know.
episode in the 20-minute rant on leftovers at the beginning of this video.
That's how you know Brandon's about to have an aneurysm, when he does a 20-minute diatribe on leftovers at the beginning of the Resurrectionist.
Yeah, man. Look,
man has a heart attack 45 minutes later.
Model's fucking good. Haku and I were talking about him for like 2 hours after we finished Arcanists on Friday night. It is now Sunday night, the 25th. Jesus. All right. We're talking now about, and don't get me wrong, I have plenty of enthusiasm left for these next 2 models. More for this one than the next one. I like Old Hob, but holy shit, Ezekiel is fucking cracked. I'm putting him in S tier, and you're not going to stop me. Ezekiel. This guy is 6 caught. Ezekiel Gautreaux. He's one of the Gautreaux, which you might be familiar with, the Gautreaux family, because they have Bocors, which are bad models you should never hire. Ezekiel. He's a 6 stone enforcer. He has 5s across the board. He is size 1. He has penetrating stench, protected undead, and intuition. This model was actually spoiled at Nova, which you might have seen in our Discord if you in Nova of last year in September. We went to the thing. I posted the picture of the thing, and one of the questions that was asked in the meeting, or the presentation where they were spoiling some of these models, was, are you guys worried, to the designers, about Resers having access to 3 instances of intuition in every crew, because this model's wild and they're going to take 2 of those? And the designers were flat out like, no. Anywho, that's my intuition anecdote.
Anyway, that's my story.
And so Ezekiel has a back of a card. He has Fresh Meat, which is a deceptively good attack. It's stat 5 against willpower, 10 inches. Friendly undead models with line of sight to the target may push 3 inches towards the target. It does not do damage. It has 3 triggers, which you'll know what's coming because intuition, but ram for clawed to pieces. The target suffers damage equal to the number of mindless zombies engaging it to a maximum of 3, which, come on, guys, like, fucking uncap that, you cowards. It has a crow for delay, and then it has a crow for resurrect. Enemy only, summon a mindless zombie into base contact with the target, which wouldn't even fucking do. You can't do multiple, whatever. You can only have 5 zombies. Why don't uncap this damage, you bastards? It's fine. I've had not enough sleep and too much caffeine. We're moving on.
Everyone,
tactical actions.
Calm down. It'll be okay, Brandon.
Actions.
It'll be okay.
We have 2 tactical actions and a bonus tactical action. Healing Energy, which is a stat 6, needs a 6 to go off, 8-inch range, heals 1, 2, 3, with baked-in Debt of Gratitude. Now, you're never going to declare this when you're healing your own models, but you get to, unresisted, your opponent can do nothing about it. At the cost of healing one of their models, they have to lose a scheme marker, and it's built in, and all you need is a 6 on any enemy model within 8 inches. It's tactical, doesn't target. It's tactical. It does target. Target heals 1, 2, 3, but it's not an attack action, which means it won't suffer from concealment. Just putting that out there. Debt of Gratitude in this strategy. It's not resisted. It's not resisted. Also, it's not resisted, but it also won't suffer from concealing. Target heals 1, 2, 3. You just get to Debt of Gratitude them. It's wild. You can cheat the heal flip if you want to heal them 1. I don't think it matters. But if you do 1 and they can't do it, they suffer 2 damage, which you net 1, but that's sort of bullshit. What you actually do with this is you just tell them to remove a scheme marker from underneath their model that they put it underneath, and then you deny them schemes. The bread and butter of Ezekiel is Zombie Apocalypse, which is a stat 4 built-in crow that needs a 10 of crows, which you might recognize from Ashura Rotten, or you don't because you've never read that card, because why would you? Summon a mindless zombie into base contact with this model. The crow is built in, so you need a suitless 6. You can do it 2 times a turn unless you fast him somehow, or obey him or whatever. Well, you can't obey him to do this because it names the model. But Zombie Apocalypse just flat out summons a zombie twice a turn, up to twice a turn for a suitless 6. Lastly, we have Protected Spirits, which is a stat 6. You need a 6 for it to go off. It pulses out shielded to every friendly model within pulse 3. And if it doesn't work because you hit a 5 or lower, it has a built-in trigger which lets you choose a friendly zombie in line of sight after resolving, so it happens whether or not it goes off, but only if it doesn't go off, because if this action failed, enemy models within pulse 2 of the chosen model pass a TN12 defense duel, or they suffer 2 damage and then kill the chosen model. So, it's wild. And there's no if you end up declaring the botch ritual trigger, there's no distance. It's just anywhere within line of sight. So you can pulse out a blow up if you really want as a bonus action if you're not going to end up doing shielded. This guy has a billion things that he does. He's a versatile model, so you should be hiring him in a bunch of crews for 6. But Joe, what do you think? Are there any standout crews that you would hire Ezekiel into?
How did you know?
Wow.
All right. So first of all, I like him. I like him a lot. 6 cost. I mean, I think you're hiring him because you want corpses and you want zombies, right?
Yep.
I think that's the obvious sentiment. But when I look at across the faction, what else can I hire for cost 6 or less to get me that? I can hire a Gravedigger. I can hire a Restless Spirit out of keyword. Or I could just hire this guy who also has a unrestricted heal that can actually heal my master, which the Gravedigger can't do if I'm in Red Chapel or in
or the
Revenant.
12-minute diatribe I went on about Debt of Gratitude and how bonkers that ability is.
Right. I mean, that there's a ton of utility there. It's nice to have that. I'm not a huge fan of I think Wyrd had posted like the Asura Rotten, let's just bomb a bunch of zombies there. I'm not a huge fan of that playstyle, but I can hire 2 zombies, mobile corpse markers a turn. I can hand out shielded to my bubble, which I don't really want to be in bubble range, but it's nice to have some extra shielded there. And fresh meat is great for helping unpack when you don't necessarily need a zombie. So
yes, it is.
It's
I think any undead model, not just zombies, right? So that's most Reser crews are mostly undead.
Yeah. And I mean, I had been, since GG4 started, I've been using Mortimer a lot for this, as well as the Chatty Aura. And I think he's cost 8. This fresh meat objectively has better triggers. I mean, Resurrect's a better trigger. Clawed to Pieces is probably not coming up, but it could. And obviously having more zombies for Seamus's gun is nice. Shielded is nice.
Yeah, I mean,
more
Ezekiel does, upon having walked up the board, just say Seamus gets to do his bonus action without restriction on your
also summons for Seamus too.
Yep.
Right.
Summons for Seamus too. Sure.
Yep. Final Veil with the zombies for Riva.
It's just such a quintessential engine piece. It was like, in my mind, Ezekiel is like a core cog piece that a lot of these crews across Resers have been looking for ways to fill this hole with models that, quite frankly, are keeping up with the Joneses in terms of power level. Now that Malifaux 3rd Edition is in... Hell, Malifaux 3rd Edition has been around for almost 4 years now, boys, right?
Yeah.
So, like, we really need, as a faction, I feel personally strongly about this, is we needed a really solid makes zombies for us model. Because we were at the point where, like, I'd seen lists where people are paying 2 soulstones for a zombie so they can kill it on turn 1. And it's like, that feels not the best. And now we have just, like, we got this little gremlin and we cranked the power level to, like, 11 on our ability to double summon if we want mindless zombies for very low effort, because it's unsuited TN5 on a model that triggers with intuition.
TN6, but it has
TN6.
intuition, and it just fits in every keyword. I mean, we could go on and give the specific examples, but it has a lot of utility. I think that what I like the heal. I think you're going to heal a lot. You're going to summon a lot. It's got a relevant bonus action. What else can you say? It's 6 cost. If you can't fit it in for 6, then you probably have other issues.
Yeah, dude.
And it's going to survive because it's protected undead. We didn't even talk about that yet.
Oh,
You're gonna have a zombie.
Yeah, I mentioned it once. You're going to summon zombies. It's not going to die. Look, if you hire a mindless zombie, if you hire a man a mindless zombie, he'll corpse marker for a day. But if you hire a man in Ezekiel, he'll corpse marker
for 5 full turns. Yeah. Joe, what are your thoughts on basically how Reva is now getting both the Ghost Eater and Ezekiel, especially Reva 1? In your mind, are those both now like strong hires for a Reva 1 list that, might have been, some people might not have been looking at before?
Yeah, I guess scroll back to the Ghost Eater to check that. I mean, I like getting the extra shielded out and the zombies out with Ezekiel for Reva 1 in particular, because you can arc her attacks probably
right. You can arc
easier.
The attacks through them.
I think one or two. I'm basically never hiring. I'm never running a Reva crew without hiring Ezekiel in it again. Reva, McMorning, Von Stuck, all of them.
Yeah, I definitely see. I probably would hire Ezekiel before the Ghost Eater, to be honest. But I'll have to test it out. I'm gonna have to test it. I can't wait to talk about the last model with her.
All right, so I have one more important development on.
I'll get
Ezekiel.
one more chat on Ezekiel, and then we'll hit the last model because we're almost at 2 hours. What do you got, Doug?
All right, so he basically enables very, very easy flesh constructs via Twisted Genius out of McMorning. And like, it's an area where you can just go with him. He doesn't even move. He just shits two zombies. And then you have a million other ways to super low effort get another corpse marker onto it, and then immediately use that, and you get a turn 1 flesh construct. Whereas before it was a much heavier investment.
I mean, you had to do stuff to get another corpse marker out of places, but you summon 2 zombies with McMorning, and maybe we'll do a thing about this, but you summon 2 zombies if you hire Ezekiel and McMorning. You go with Rafkin to poison them, and then when they die, you don't actually lose the corpse marker. You'll get a corpse marker for poison. You actually go +1 corpse marker because you're removing the corpse marker. 1 draws you a card, 1 gets another corpse marker, and they'll both drop corpse markers when they're poison 3. It's cracked. It's ridiculous. You auto windmill slam hire this model in McMorning in all cases. Also, can I just say, as much as I think this model's garbage and you should never hire her ever, Asura Rutten does say friendly mindless zombies, of which you could very quickly have 5 of on the board after turn 1, lose insignificant, which is crazy.
Yeah,
during their activations, mind you, which means opponents still can't score off them, but you can interact with them and do shit with them. Granted, if you summon them, you still can't interact with the strat, but you can score during the activation strats with them, schemes with them, which exist in every GG, right? Just saying. It's worth thinking. I don't think it's going to happen, but maybe. All right, so let's move on to the last Reser model. We have, of course, Old Hob. So this Hob is old. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
This is my Hob. He is old.
He is old. He is a 10-stone enforcer, just like every faction except for Arc Scott. He's defense 5, willpower 4. Willpower is not great, but move 5. He's armor 2 with 9 health, which is pretty crazy. And he has its raining corpses. After this model suffers damage from an enemy model, drop a corpse marker with an aura 6. Which is crazy. It's insane. He's going to drop like 3 corpse markers minimum. He's a construct, so he'll also drop a scrap when he dies. He has What a Lovely Day. After this model suffers damage, push it up to 4 inches towards the model that damaged it, ignoring other models, which means you can't shoot it over and over again because eventually it's going to get to you. And lastly, he has Wicked, which with What a Lovely Day is really good because it makes successful melee actions generated by disengage become actually just punches instead of reducing the push distance if you would like. You might recognize his attack, which is a 2-inch stat 6 melee attack against defense, as Construction Claw, Hoffman 2's ability, which unfortunately Hoffman ruined for everyone in that it's the nerfed version of it, which is place the target anywhere within 1 inch of its current position, which is crap. It should have been within range of Old Hob. And it has a Dismember trigger and a Puncture trigger, which are both very good. He also gets to Hurl Corpse, which is stat 7 against defense, and obviously he's going to be dropping a bunch of corpse markers, because as people try and damage him, corpses will drop anywhere he wants. He will then throw them, which is a 2/3/4. For some reason, and this baffles me, it's not a projectile, even though you're literally projectile throwing a corpse. But you place the corpse marker into base contact with them, and then he has a ram trigger on that attack for the target and enemy models within pulse 1 suffer 1 damage, which makes it effectively a 3/4/5. He has Candy's ability, Temper Tantrum, which on a 5 pulses a 4-inch duel that enemies have to have a TN14 willpower or they gain slow. But he has a ram trigger to take a melee action or a tome trigger to, until end phase, this model increases the range of all of its actions by +1, and it cannot move or be buried, which you might recognize from the Malisaurus Rex. So his melee becomes 3 inches, which is nuts. His Coral Corpse becomes 9, which is less relevant. And then lastly, he has a bonus action called Corpse Picker, which needs a suitless 5 to go off. It's a +4, remove any number of corpse markers within range, and this model heals +1 for each marker removed this way. With a tome trigger for leftover parts, when resolving, drop a ski marker into base contact with one of the markers before you remove it, which means if they're pinging him down and you're standing in one spot and he gets to activate, he'll just fully heal. Which with armor 2 is likely to happen because min 3 attacks do 1 damage to him at armor 2 and then drop 1 corpse and then he eats them all for a corpse picker. Joe, was that your experience?
Yeah, it basically was. I got a little greedy and I tried to hold out as long as I could. I should have healed him earlier, but so this guy took 4 pings and then 4 attacks to get down. So I had dropped 8 corpse markers and a scrap marker. Basically before I even activated with him. And I'm like, well, I got everything I need now, resource wise. I think I like this model a lot. It's probably not an auto include depending on what your approach is, or your game plan is. But again, armor 2, you're probably not teching armor piercing in unless you're playing Transmortis. So it should be pretty survivable. The passive corpse generation from its raining corpses is really great. The fact that I can launch it 6 inches up the board, you want this thing in the face anyway, so you're just going to have corpse markers on the other side of the board. That's great for Seamus's gun. It's great for Reva 1 arcing attacks from. It's great for McMorning, reduce, reuse, recycle, synergy. The whole faction loves corpses for the most part, right? So it's very good. What a Lovely Day is nice. You can kind of drag it up the board. If you have AP with your models that you're looking to do something with. The Hurl Corpse is really, it's got a ton of utility. I mean, I've wondered why I don't use this with the Grave Golem, and then you look and it's like, why is his stat 5? It's just sad face. The corpse marker is a cost, right? So even if you miss, you still put the thing up and put it in base contact with the target.
Yep.
So it's nice to throw some corpse candles into position, or other. Not that you probably wouldn't do that with a corpse curator unless you were doing it on your own model.
Yeah, but I mean, for corpse candles though, holy crap, does Revel love this guy throwing her corpse candles?
Oh yeah. I mean, it seems good like that. The temper tantrum. Maybe I'm stuck in second grade because I don't really. I guess it's a nice ability. I mean, I'm thinking about TN14 willpower duels with Scarlet Temptation up seems nice. I can't think of, unless I'm trying not to be moved off of a Raid the Vaults mark or something, why I would ever use Territorial versus just getting a free melee attack with him. I don't know. I kind of just.
I mean,
I'd have to try it.
You also can't be buried, so
if you're not in range of the melee, I guess, if it's 3 to 4 inches away or 2.01 or more.
But
if you're not in range, you don't get the. Yeah, I guess you. Yeah, but it's not a bonus, right? So it's like I'd rather just charge probably.
I think more so you want to have it against Lady Justice or or somebody who can bury him. I will say though, the massive downside to that is that it does make him a huge liability against obey models. Almost to the point where you can't hire him because all they have to do is attack your willpower 4 model and then have any 5 or higher tome in hand, and then he just doesn't get to move for the turn before he activates, which is really rough. But It's
I don't
worrying.
know how about I don't know how I feel about this guy. I don't know.
The heal is nice. I mean, there's not too many things. After watching what happened with him today and having for a 5, you're telling me I could heal 8.
Yeah,
like
I think he's insanely hard to put down if you don't get greedy with it.
I had a chance to heal. I had a chance to
Where
activate
do
it
you
and
think
heal
this
him.
guy shines the best in the like? I don't know. It's a lot of stones, guys. 10 stones.
It's a lot
for
of
this model.
stones for sure. The other thing about the bonus, I like the scheme marker. I mean, we've seen this with some of these models. We've had some range drawed secrets, triggers. We've had some other things that have allowed us to put scheme markers at range. So I like this. This is a bonus 4 inches away. You're going to have corpses there. Put your corpse where you need a scheme, and then with it's raining corpses, and then you basically get a free scheme marker if you have a tome.
He also seems very combo-y in pools where it's like information overload is in the pool and you want to outwardly win it. So then you can take,
just run him into the back line, take information overload on is information overload scheme marker, isn't it?
Oh yeah, but put him with
or
a
is it
grave
any
digger.
marker?
And no. So what you do is you hire this dude, right?
Yeah.
And then you take, there's like a bunch of these models in Resur, but you hire one of the models that gives the ability for corpse markers to count as scheme markers.
It's Gravedigger. It's the Reba one
the mournful memories chick, or the mourner.
Yeah, I don't even remember her name.
Yeah,
probably still won't take her.
And then you just like morph all of those into absurd levels of come out of nowhere, scheme marker spam, and you can even sneaky Pete it where, like, let's say out of Shames 2, you can like last activation summon a mourner, and then you're like, haha, all of these are scheme markers now.
Yeah.
You've been foiled, Batman.
I made a mistake in my game today. I didn't pick deathbeds, but it would have been an easy win.
Right.
With that as well.
Right. Because like the ability to just kind of AoE convert things into scheme markers, that is where I see this guy being tremendously good. But I'm also like, it's 10.
It's 10 costs.
It's a lot
right?
it's a lot of
It's a lot of stones. I think when the matchup is right, you're gonna feel like it was a great spend.
It'll win you the game when the matchup is right, I think.
Look, the attack is always relevant. Hurl Corpse is probably always going to be relevant. I don't know. I mean, well, it's always going to be relevant in what I'm playing, I guess.
It's a stat 7 Hurl Corpse, which is pretty dope. I'll admit that.
It is pretty dope. Plus, I mean, Construction Claw is a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
Well, it was a hell of a drug. Now it's
it's still a hell of a drug. Like, especially in Reva, right? You're making corpses with it. You're placing your opponents in hazardous, which sucks for them.
Yeah, well, but you don't want this guy on fire necessarily, but you have a lot of ways to pull it off.
Yep.
I don't know. I like it. I think the thing is 10 cost, right? So that's going to hold it back from being always hired.
Yeah, I honestly, I maybe below Oskar, but I think solid sometimes higher. I think this guy is gonna be clutch in a lot of ways. I don't think he's necessarily going to be super good in everything, but I think he's real strong and really hard to put down outside if your opponent didn't tech against him. And how could they? He's a versatile model. They're not just going to windmill slam armor piercing against all Resurs indefinitely. Not for this model, at least, right?
Yeah.
Does B sound fine? Everyone happy with B?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm gonna try. I can't wait to try this out with Reva 1 in particular.
Yeah, Reva 1, I think he's not.
Because I can just imagine a world where I've got 15 corpse markers within 6 inches of the center line across the whole board, and I can just charge Reva anywhere I want to go and hit somebody. Seems good.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that concludes our final tier list of Resurs. Resurrectionist tier list for Ashes of Malifaux. This was twice the length of every other tier list, which is hilarious.
My god, yeah.
But in our defense, though, most of the other factions had 7 models or 6 models or 8 models. This one has 14, so it's not super surprising. But a special thank you to Joe for coming on. We love having you on the channel. This was amazing. I'm so glad.
Thanks for having me, guys.
all the fun stuff. Of course, Doug, you are here all the time. Thank you. Just
yeah,
in
it's
general.
great. You know, it's just a blessing to be around you, Brandon. Be in your
thank
radiant aura.
You know, well, sometimes you gotta do that, or my foggy,
Or your frenetic
through-
energy aura is also pretty sweet too. It's
That's
like
true.
an electric storm of energy.
Yeah, well, after 8 tier list videos in a row in the same weekend, I am pretty mindless, and I feel almost insignificant. So I'm gonna have to go. Thank you again so much. I guess in parting, dude, holy fucking shit, the leftovers. Oh my god.
No, stop. We can't afford another 20 minutes on this video length.
That's
Goodbye,
all
the
we got.
internet. It was
Say
a pleasure.
goodbye to the internet.
Have a good
We shall
one,
meet
guys.
again.
Say goodbye, Spider-Man.
Goodbye, Spider-Man.
That's a wild Jenna Marbles reference, but all right. Have a good night, guys. Thanks for watching.
Have a good one.
Bye.